NVUSD Board of Education is holding a regular virtual board meeting tonight that all can participate in remotely. You can join via Zoom. Specific directions on how to participate are located on the Board of Education webpage on the district's website, nvusd.org/board. The open session part of the meeting agenda begins at 7 p.m. Now we're going on to public comment on closed session items. So before going into closed session, the board is available for public comment on closed session agenda items. Mr. Bassinet, do I have any public comment on closed session items?
There is no public comment.
Thank you. Seeing that there are none, the Napa Valley Unified School District will now adjourn into closed session. See you all back at 7. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. We are reconvening to our open session. My name is Elba Gonzalez Mares, and this is the Napa Valley Unified School District Board of Education. NVUSD Board of Education is holding a regular board meeting tonight that all can participate remotely. You can join via Zoom. Buenas noches, mi nombre es Elba González Mares y esta es la Mesa de Educación del Distrito Unificado del Valle de Napa, NVUSD por sus siglas en inglés. La Mesa de Educación de NVUSD está llevando a cabo una reunión regular esta noche en la que todos pueden participar de forma remota. Puede unirse a través de Zoom. Interpretation in Spanish is available for tonight's virtual board meeting. To access interpretation from a computer, click on the interpretation icon on the bottom of your screen from within the Zoom application. On a mobile device, click on the More button on the bottom of your screen and choose Language Interpretation from within the Zoom application. This is a separate channel that will allow you to hear English to Spanish translation concurrently. Please note, interpretation services are not available when you join our meeting by calling in. Our interpreters for tonight's meeting are Paul Huertas and Claudia Lindgren. May we have one of the interpreters please translate these instructions on our English channel so our Spanish-speaking families can hear the instructions.
Buenas noches. La reunión de la mesa directiva del Distrito Escolar del Valle de Napa tiene la oportunidad usted de escuchar esta reunión en el idioma español. Haga usted un clic en la parte baja de su pantalla en el icono del globo terráqueo y lo llevará a escoger el idioma. Escoge usted el idioma Spanish. Si usted está llamando desde un teléfono celular, tiene la opción de hacerlo apretando la tecla del símbolo más, perdón, el símbolo de número, y lo llevará a otra pantalla para que escoja el idioma español. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Specific instructions on how to participate in the meeting are located on the Board of Education webpage on the district's website, nvusd.org/board. Can we please start with an attendance roll call from Vera Morales, Executive Assistant?
Yes. Student board member?
Here.
Trustee Gonzalez Mares?
Present?
Trustee Jankowicz?
Present.
Trustee Gracia?
Present.
Trustee Reiser?
Present.
Trustee Water?
Present.
Trustee Shu?
Present.
Trustee Dooley?
Here.
Quorum present. Thank you.
Thank you, Vera. Thank you for joining us tonight for our Napa Valley Unified School District Board meeting. The public participation remains virtual, online only. This meeting tonight is in accordance with the open meeting rules in the state of California per the governor's order. On June 11, 2021, the governor issued Executive Order N-0821, which expressly extends the flexibility concerning the conduct of public meetings through September 30, 2021. Thus, NVUSD will continue to conduct our public meetings online through September 30th. As trustees, we have returned to the boardroom. However, in order to ensure access to our meetings without any limitations, we are holding meetings online with remote access via Zoom for the public and guests. I'm going to start tonight with some basic instructions on how we are going to be using Zoom and involve the members of the community. All Board of Trustees and the superintendent on our video throughout the entire board meeting from here in the boardroom. Other staff members are present by video. Members of the community will not be on video and will be muted except during public comment. During public comment, any member of the community that wishes to speak must raise their hand using the raised hand feature in Zoom. You will be unmuted and will be provided 3 minutes to speak. There are two ways to make a public comment within the time allotted for public comment on an eligible agenda item. To comment by video conference, click the raise your hand button to request to speak when public comment is being taken on the eligible agenda item. When it is your turn to speak, your name will be called out. You will then be unmuted during your turn and allowed to make public comments. After the allotted time, you will then be remuted. Instructions on how to raise your hand are available on the district's website at nvusd.org/board. To comment by phone, you will be prompted to raise your hand by pressing *9 to request to speak when public comment is being taken on the eligible agenda item. When it is your turn to speak, the last 4 digits of your phone number will be called out. You will then be unmuted during your turn and allowed to make public comment. After the allotted time, you will then be remuted. Instructions on how to raise your hand by phone are available on the district's website at nvusd.org/board. In addition, community members were allowed to submit comments via email at publiccomment@nvusd.org up until 8 a.m. this morning. For every agenda item, I will prompt the meeting participants who have joined us via Zoom for public comment. Please follow the instructions just provided when you would like to comment on an item. Okay, now we'll ask Trustee Gracia if he could give us a report on closed session items.
Yes. In closed session, the board took action to approve the following staff recommendations effective 2021-2022 school year. Elizabeth Coro to the position of coordinator of the Migrant Education Program. And that is all that we have to report from closed session.
Thank you, Trustee Gracia. We now go into our next item, which we will do a more formal welcome in a moment, but I will ask our student board representative of our school year 21-22, Emily, if you could lead us in the flag salute, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Emily. We have an announcement that this meeting is recorded for live streaming and archiving of the district YouTube channel. For a detailed review of any meeting agenda item, the archive video can be referenced located on the district's webpage at nvusd.org. The public can join the virtual board meeting remotely via Zoom. Participation instructions and the process of public comment can be found on the district's webpage. We now move to next agenda item, which is item E4, approval of agenda. But
Move to
prior-
approve.
Prior to doing that, we do need to pull an item, and that's item H6B.
Move to approve with the pulled item.
Second.
First by Trustee Gracia, second by Trustee Dooley. All those in favor?
Aye.
Student Board Rep,
Aye.
thank you. Anybody abstain? Oppose? Great. Thank you. We have our agenda. Now we're moving on to our approval of minutes.
All right, I'll move to approve E5A, June 22nd, 2021.
Second.
First by Trustee Gracia, a second by Trustee Water. Our student board rep wasn't here at the time. So all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody oppose? Or abstain? Okay, thank you. Now item E5B,
Move to approve.
Second.
first by Trustee Gracia, second by Trustee Water. Student board rep wasn't here yet. Anyone? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody abstain? Okay, thank you. Item E5C,
Move to approve.
I'll second.
first by Trustee Gracia, second by Trustee Chu. Student board rep wasn't present yet. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Okay, great, thank you. Now, item E6, this is recognition of visitors and employee organizations. Dr. Massetti, who do we welcome tonight?
Thank you very much, President Gonzalez Morales. I don't see any of our labor leaders. I think they're still probably enjoying some of their time
As they
in
should.
the summer.
Great, thank you. All right, next item is public comment. Public comments on non-agenda items. Members of the audience may address the board on any school-related matter that is not on the agenda. The board will not take action on any issues raised during this section of the agenda inasmuch as board action is limited to posted agenda items. Speakers are requested to limit their comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. Before we see who's joining us virtually, I will ask Trustee Gracia to please read the public comment received on non-agenda items.
Yes. No public comments on non-agenda items were submitted via email at publiccomment@nvusd.org before the board meeting.
Okay, thank you. So now I will ask Mr. Bassinet if we have any public comment under this item F.
We do have public comment. First person will be Jacob Burgess.
Hello.
Yes, we hear you. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jacob Burgess, and I have 2 children that will be attending Northwood Elementary School. And I'm just curious as to what the decision is for the school district to force our children to wear masks. Zero risk is not attainable whether the kids wear masks or not. And at best, applied perfectly, an N95 mask will only filter 95% of particulates. Take that a step further, and the smallest particulate an N95 mask will filter is 0.3 micrometers. COVID-19 is 0.1 micrometers. This is from the CDC website and the California Department of Health website. So I ask you, you could also look on the website and it'll tell you that an N95 mask cannot be applied properly to fit children. So I ask you, why are you forcing our children to wear masks? Why is it not up to the children whether or not they would like to wear a mask? That is all I have to say.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Next speaker, Mr. Bassinet.
Next speaker will be the phone number 707-624-5605.
Okay, I don't hear anybody.
Hello.
Yes, go
Hello?
ahead. Can you please state your name?
Yes, my name is Norma Ortiz, and I want to know at some point, how much does the district receive in supplemental and concentration grants? And how will this figure grow over time? The second question, how does the district plan to use these funds to benefit low-income students, English learners, foster youth, and other high-need group of students? Next question, how will or is the district evaluating progress towards LCAP goals? Following the previous board meeting, I would like to also reference that it's important to continue supporting financially the special education department. So thank you. And in regards to masks, I think it's important that we continue that policy. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next speaker.
Next speaker is Lindsay Kling.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I am a resident. I'm a mom of 5. I have 3 school-age children that attend Pueblo Vista and Willow Elementary. I am an ERYT 500, which is a high-level, professional level yoga teacher. I was actually hired 2020 by you guys, by the school district, to teach yoga for Willow Elementary. And the week I was set to start was unable to, because that's when the lockdowns happened. I also was given a volunteer award for volunteering teaching yoga at West Park Elementary for my children's kindergarten and first grade. I saw 50 children once a week for the school year of kindergarten and first grade. I taught these kids movement and breath work, meditation, quieting the mind, and saw incredible results. The ability to sit and focus and be participating in class, especially for the kids who had a little bit of a harder time getting their wiggles out and sitting still and paying attention. The yoga training was insurmountable. The evidence that they were actually able to do this thing called school in the most effective way was there. And that's why I was so excited to start teaching at Willow in 2020. I guess what I have to say is this: I do not believe in mask mandates. I believe that children should be free to breathe, to smile, to connect. My kids have experienced grave repercussions from the masking and the social distancing, not being in school. I don't agree with it. I think you'll find that there are more than enough parents to get this mandate to stop. I ask you, what are you planning to do as far as having the masks come off and on the kids' faces all day in school? How are you going to stop bacterial transmission from hands on masks with all levels of children? B, if you're going to have outdoor school, how much outdoor school are you going to have? Are you going to have, if the weather is nice, are the kids going to be outside learning? And how are you going to deal with the budget issues of mothers and fathers who do not send their kids to your schools anymore when masks are required? It's really, really, really important that you hear us. This is not going to go away. We're not going to stop calling in. We're not going to stop telling you that it's wrong that you're covering our children's faces, and we're not going to send our kids to school if this is what you're doing. So, you know, if you could please just let me know what your plans are. Is this just going to be a trickle down effect of mandated from our governor, who's got all these emergency executive orders in place, or are you guys going to think for yourselves? Thanks for your time.
Thank you for your comment. Next speaker, Mr. Bassinet.
Jeanette.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for having me tonight. My question actually is also about masks. As we all know, there's been multiple tragedies that have happened to our children and to our young adults due to the mental health impact of school closures and the restrictions and masks. We are concerned that if we don't make sure that our children are free to share their smiles, they're going to start losing their smiles. Because what we know is our children are at very low risk of COVID, but they are at high risk for the mental health crisis that is happening right now. And I know that we're all concerned about that. It's everywhere, and we can see it in our communities and our children, our friends' children's. We're told that kids have to wear masks because they're at risk from COVID, but the data shows that their risk is less than from other respiratory viruses like influenza. The CDC estimates that only 332 children have died from COVID-19 in the last 18 months. The CDC also estimates that 434 children died from influenza during the 12-month 2019-2020 flu season and 600 in 2017-18 season. The New York Times found children are about 10 times more likely to die in a car accident than from COVID. The Financial Times found that children are less risk for COVID-19 than vaccinated adults. So I'm asking, can you guys please explain why we are forcing our children to wear masks, kicking them out of school for weeks, and testing them for a virus when they have no symptoms to avoid a virus no worse than influenza? I know you're all also concerned about the learning loss that you're seeing in your academic community. I know I'm seeing it, and my friends are seeing it in their own kids. I know you're concerned about the rising anxiety and depression rates. We understand you're under a state mandate, but you still have a responsibility as a school board, and you do have things that you can do. You still have a voice, and you have people that elected you that expect you to use that voice. There's a lack of science showing that our children need to wear masks, but there's abundance of science showing that these masks are hurting our children. We're asking for school boards, for you guys to stand with us and tell the state that you want local control back. You want to be able to do your job and make decisions for your community, and you want to be able to listen to the parents and children who just want a choice. Someone wants to wear a mask, that's fine. But if a child is saying that they can't take it anymore, they can't focus with a mask on or breathe with a mask on, they want to be able to see their teachers' faces and their friends' faces and make connections, they need to be able to have that choice. We're just asking for the ability to make our own medical decisions for our children. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your comment. Next speaker, Mr. Bassinet.
Kelsey Hunsaker.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
All right, hi, I'm a teacher in the school district for elementary, and I also have a daughter in elementary. And just kind of piggyback on mask choice for parents. You know, as a teacher last year, I taught pregnant in our classroom with first grade, and at that time, that's when masks were optional for TK through 2. And we were very fortunate where during that time when half of my class was not wearing masks, we had no cases. And then when we went to mask wearing for all TK through 2, there was 1 case in my class at the end of the school year, and no community spread. So as a parent and a teacher, you know, you can definitely celebrate that, you know, our kids can be in school. And, but my biggest concern is that 2.5 hours, I saw first graders who are at a young age, just learning basic hygiene, how to wash their hands, how to zip up or need help with zipping up their jackets or putting their sweatshirts. Like, can you help me? It's inside out. These children do not know how to have basic hygiene with masks. And I have a first grade daughter. I'm worried about the studies I've seen with high levels of carbon dioxide within 3 minutes. I'm worried about all of the bacterial infections they can get wearing a mask. And now this is going to be a 6-hour day, you know, where we're gonna have to send our kids to school with multiple masks. I'm worried about, are they going to get Rocky Mountain fever? Are they going to get periodontal disease? Are they going to get, you know, are they going to have fatigue, headaches? What are they going to get from wearing these masks all day? They're going to be taking them on and off, dropping on the ground, they're sneezing in them. And those are things as an adults that we know, like, we don't want to put that back on our face. And, you know, as a teacher and as a parent, I just want to put that out there. I know it's a sensitive topic for right now of mask choice in schools, but if we are going to continue this way, we need to find ways to have our kids be outdoors. How can we teach them outside, let them breathe? You know, the community of Napa, they were able to figure out ways for restaurants putting up tents and, you know, outdoor areas. Our kids need to be outside more with fresh air and learning. And just those 2.5 hours as being a teacher last year, I had kids complaining, not being able to breathe, having a headache, feeling tired. Can I take my mask off? Now we're going to be in school all day. And I worry about that. I worry about my own daughter. I'm thankful that I had a preschooler last year at St. John's Lutheran, whole year, no masks for kids and teachers, not 1 case. Friends at Veritas Academy, whole year, no masks, optional, no community spread. I'm worried about, we don't have enough studies of carbon dioxide or bacterial for our kids with masks. And we need to find a way to have our kids at least be outdoor more and work together as a community to let our kids be outside, breathe, learn, and just learn to work together. Because I know it's going to, on both sides, have their argument, but I just hope we can find a way to let our kids breathe. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next speaker, Mr. Bassinet.
Alicia.
Hi, I'm sorry, I wasn't totally expecting to speak this quickly. I just raised my hand. I am a district employee as well as a parent of a 7th grader and a 4th grader who has special needs. And I just wanted to chime in to say thank you to the district for having the mask mandates. I appreciate that we are doing it to keep our kids and staff members safe, that the state of California is doing it. Napa County just a second ago issued an order by Dr. Karen Relucio, the county's public health officer, making it mandatory for all individuals to wear face coverings while indoors in workplaces and public settings, regardless of vaccination status. I worked at an elementary school during COVID. I do not agree that the students have a problem with wearing masks. Yes, sometimes they fall down over their noses and under their noses and have to be reminded, but we've been doing it long enough. I think that we've got it under control by now. So again, thank you. And let's have a great school year. And I hope everybody stays safe and healthy.
Thank you for your comment. Next speaker.
There is no more public comment for non-agenda items.
Okay, great. Thank you. Then we will now move forward with the agenda with our section G of reports, starting with the Board of Education and Student Board Representative. We usually start with our board representative, but seeing that's your first day, first meeting, Emily, I don't know if you want to go ahead and just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then I'm sure we'll share our excitement about having you here today.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Emily Bitt. I'm a rising senior at American Canyon High. I've been an American Canyon resident for almost my entire life. So I'm very excited to be serving on this board alongside with all of my amazing school board members and superintendent. A little bit about me. I'm a leadership student. I really like to volunteer within my community. I really like to work with kids. And I'm really excited to represent students and connect with more students across the district for district issues.
Thank you, Emily. All right, let's start with our student board updates here. Trustee Gracia.
Yep. So I just wanted to start by saying welcome to our new student board member. It's great to have you here at our first meeting. Hopefully everyone had a good summer with some much needed time off. I took the opportunity to go on a camping and backpacking trip. I also wanted to take a moment to let the folks who are impacted by the various fires around the state know that our thoughts and prayers are with them as they contend with the losses suffered from those fires.
Emily, welcome. I hope everyone enjoyed their summer hiatus. I hope you are rejuvenated, refreshed, and received a little fuel from spending time with family and friends. I share David's thoughts about those impacted by the fire. We've all experienced it all too well. So our hearts are with you. And we started our week with a back to school safety family information session where Mr. Mansway and Mr. Pearson reviewed our safety protocols. And on Wednesday, we had an independent study information session where we addressed the protocol to participate in the independent study program and the process that one needs to follow to participate. And welcome back, everyone.
So I will echo my previous trustees' comments. Welcome, Emily. We're so happy to have you here, and thank you for being here on this first meeting, and thank you in advance for some of the late nights that you might be putting in. And I know all of the hard work and diligence you're going to bring to this role. So we're very happy to have you. Thank you so much. And yes, welcome back, everybody. It's great to be back, and I hope everyone had an enjoyable time off. I clocked 3,000 miles in a small-ish SUV with 2 teenage girls and my husband and a dog. So it was the Great American Road Trip, and we had a wonderful time, and it was a much-needed reset for me and my brain. Like Trustee Jankowicz, I wasn't able to do it in real time, but I listened to the recordings of the family information safety session that was on Tuesday. I was tabling for Moms Demand Action at the National Night Out sponsored by the Sheriff's Association. So that's where I was when that was happening. And then I also listened to the recording of the independent studies session, and And I guess that's all, because I've been clocked out of board work. So that concludes my report. Glad to be here.
I'm glad to be back too, and welcome Emily Bitt to, this is just going to be the most fun-filled time of your senior year. I just want you to batten down the hatches and get ready. And Emily is too modest, but she's the young lady who organized the art show last year that I was bragging about. And so she has wonderful organizational skills, very impressive. Okay, well, I didn't go anywhere this summer. After all, I live in a tourist paradise, I'm told, and so I had a staycation, but it seemed like the world came to me, and I was very happy to welcome my son, who I had not seen in 18 months because of COVID. So that was a lot of fun. There's a sad occasion. I went to Dr. John Glazer's funeral, our memorial service, our former superintendent, and I guess he's the example of the life well lived, highly educated person, but most important, he was a great gentleman, kind to everyone, and his legacy is our interest-based bargaining that we have in our school district. And he had a serious illness, got him in the end, but he remained active and contributing, serious contributor to our community right up to the end, and set an example to us all. And it was really, I know his wife, Carol, but it was really a delight to meet his daughters. And well, you want people to be sorry when you leave. And we are sorry that John left us. Let's see, on July 9th, Governor Newsom came to Shearer School, where he signed, with students' help, the biggest education bill in the history of the state of California. And our superintendent and I and Isela and assorted other people were there and saw it happen. And it was a great day. I also, on the 16th, went to the summer graduation for the summer school students. It was held at Valley Oak, where I gave the greatest speech of my career. And, on August 3rd, I listened to the back to school safety protocol meeting. And last night, I listened to the meeting about independent studies. And I'm here, and I'm glad to see you all, and I'm ready to work.
So I too had a lot of road trips this summer. Went camping Lake Tahoe, where we did see the fires that were north and south of us. Went to San Diego Zoo because my youngest had never been. But glad to be starting a new school year. And glad to be working with all of you, and especially Emily. It's great to have another American Canyon resident in the same room, where it's just been great I'm hoping that you'll have a great experience with us. Good to see you in person finally. On June 28th, I actually visited the Camp NVUSD at Canyon Oaks, and I am in Cindy's camp, where she thinks that all the kids are going to be super happy and grateful to be back at their home school. And I did see that happening. All the kids were engaged. I recognized a couple of them, so I followed up with their parents to see what they felt. And they were just ecstatic to be back in the classroom, even though it was basically the week after school ended, 2 weeks after school ended. So I'm looking forward to a great school year, and I hope all the kids are as well. On July 14th, I listened in on the California School Board Association budget workshop with all the new changes that are coming up. It's exciting, all the new infusion of money. I hope that we continue in that direction, because I know all schools need that extra funding. And I also listened in on the Back to School Safety Family Information Session this past Tuesday.
It's also great to be back. I went on a road trip with my family down to Southern California. And I've also been, we're having work done at our home. So I've been spending my summer in my old stomping grounds of Sonoma. And while, you know, we're making do, it really reminded us and reminds us of why we left Sonoma and why we love the community of Napa. So, you know, it's temporary and we're ready to be done, but it's good to have those kinds of things to put life in perspective. I also want to welcome Emily. It's a great thing that you're participating in, and we all feel it, and I'm glad that you get to experience it. I too went to attended the back to school safety meeting on Tuesday. Last week, I also attended the middle school language academy mission and vision information session. It's a mouthful, but it was a great kind of first look at something that'll be coming to the board in the future. And yeah, I'm ready to get back to work.
You know, I think we all had a facilities tour too. We just did it separately.
Oh,
Yeah. Eye-opening for some of us.
Yeah, we were busy before taking felt like a tiny break though. I mean, but it was a break. I won't add more except that I was reached out by a friend who was letting me know of a passing of a teacher that I had never met, but I just wanted to recognize that Virginia Loeffler, she worked for NVUSD for 26 years, retired in 2002, and unfortunately passed away, but her obituary was just beautiful. And as Trustee Water was mentioning of our past superintendent, John Glazier. But what is most striking as well is that even in her passing, she continues to be a teacher because she donated her brain to continue to be studied. So just being a legacy and just continuing to give back. So I think with that said, maybe let's take a moment of silence and just remember those who have been lost. We've talked about fires and our past staff of NVUSD, and I think it'd be kind of nice to take that moment and reflect upon that. So let's do a moment. Great, thank you, everyone. Okay, so now we're on to board representative reports. This is from our various committees. Let's start with Curriculum and Student Support Committee.
Not yet.
Not yet met. And then Facilities and Technology Committee.
Have not yet met.
Not yet met. Finance Committee. Yeah, lots of coming up meetings. Policy Committee.
Next week.
Special Education Committee Advisory.
Upcoming, but haven't met yet.
Okay, thank you. City of American Canyon.
That's next week.
That's next week. City of Napa.
Next week.
Next week. And Town of Yountville.
Have not met.
Okay, thank you for those updates. Superintendent and executive staff.
Great. Well, good evening, trustees. Our new student board representative, Emily, welcome, and NVUSD community. Welcome back. I'm so excited to be here for our first Board of Education meeting of the 21-22 school year. Sounds like the trustees got their well-deserved rest during the July recess. And I hope you're all as energized and enthusiastic, it sounds like you are, as I am about the return to school on August 18th. So the clock is ticking. And because it's ticking, our staff is currently working really hard to ensure that all of our campuses are prepared to receive our students in the next couple of weeks And wow, I think I said it at a previous board meeting, what a difference a year makes. We are thrilled that the first day of school will be much more normal, much more like what we're used to, despite the fact that we do still need to tend to some of the safety precautions and protocols as we continue to navigate the evolving impacts of the COVID-19 global pandemic. NVUSD continues to work closely with Napa County Public Health to ensure safety remains our top priority in school operations, all while preparing for the majority of our NVUSD students to return to full days of in-person instruction in the classroom. I just want to take a moment to note, we heard concerns about the indoor masking requirement. We heard advocacy for the indoor masking requirement from our various community members. And I want to thank community members for always providing their input, insights, and feedback. But just, for the record, the school district is required to follow the guidelines, the school guidelines, the California school guidance that is provided to us vis-a-vis California Department of Public Health, which then comes through Napa County Public Health. And right now the mandate is masks indoors, but students do not have to use those masks outside. That is the current mandate. We do not set those mandates and we are legally required to follow them. On another note, this week, my full cabinet team and I facilitated our annual 2-day leadership conference for all NVUSD administrators in the district. The theme of the 2 days was Better Together, Stronger Than Ever, a theme that we're adopting for the 21-22 school year at large across our school system. I have a short slideshow to share with everyone tonight so you can observe our leaders in action, thinking, collaborating, and strategizing about how they could start this upcoming school year with the strength, the positivity, and the enthusiasm our students deserve and need from all of us as their school leaders. So Mr. Bassinet, can you cue up the slideshow of the leadership conference for me?
We're on a journey, looking back on the things that we've taken for granted, but feels like we're learning to be better without what's been holding us back now. Let's move closer to a new history, find out what we can be together. Take my hand and we will conquer the world. This is our final chance. 'Cause one day we'll be looking back at this. We were in a big mess together. But we found a way to choose right from wrong. We found the strength to go on together. To go on together. Yeah. To go on together.
Thank you, Mr. Bassinet. So hopefully you got just a feeling and an energy about the day. We were very focused on team building and reconnecting. The conference was designed to ensure that NVUSD leaders are focused on rebuilding community and connection while prioritizing the socio-emotional well-being of students, staff, and as you can see over the course of the two days, most importantly themselves, because we have to take care of ourselves first before we can take care of others. And we're hoping that they make this a priority. We modeled over the course of the 2 days, because we all need that as we return to school after such a tumultuous period in all of our lives. We did that by first rebuilding, we accomplished modeling that model by first focusing on rebuilding our relationships as a leadership team, our connections as a leadership team, as I hope that you were able to observe in the slideshow shared this evening. And I'm confident that they're going to take that energy out to their departments and schools as they prepare for a successful back to school in the next couple of weeks. Our central office team confidently believes that we've set the tone for the year and that we've positioned our NVUSD leaders to have a successful 21-22 school year. It was an absolute pleasure for me after returning from medical leave to spend 2 full days with all of them. And I was reminded of how lucky and blessed we are to have such a committed, passionate group of leaders here in the Napa Valley Unified School District. I wanted to report to the trustees in the community that I was also pleased to use some of the conference time to share with our full management team the annual priorities that were established by the board during our superintendent's evaluation workshop in late June. In fact, as we start our upcoming year of governance, I wanted to just take a few additional minutes this evening to also share with the public the annual priorities established by the Board of Education, given that these priorities will guide my work as your superintendent of schools, and of course, consequently, also the work of the entire leadership team that you saw before you in the slideshow throughout the course of the upcoming school year. So Mr. Bassinet, can I ask you to please cue up the slideshow on the board annual priorities? So trustees, this should look very familiar after our work in June. So I just wanted again to kind of put it in a formal, quick presentation for everyone, reflect them back to the trustees as we start our year of governance as a reminder, and then of course for the community at large. Go ahead, Mr. Bassinet. There's the 8 of us who worked on this back in June. Go ahead, Mr. Bassinet. Just a reminder that these annual priorities are connected to our strategic plan, our 6 goals. But most importantly, the priorities are the way that we're going to advance, breathing life essentially into this mission and vision that we have adopted. When we adopted that strategic plan in December of 2018, we also adopted this mission and vision, which is about transforming lives by instilling and inspiring lifelong learning in every student. And all of our priorities are a way of making sure that this mission and vision manifests. Go ahead. Just a reminder, 6 goals. We don't want to forget about our strategic plan as we focus on our annual priorities. And so go ahead, Mr. Bassinet. We're not aborting and abandoning our 6 strategic plan goals. It's just that our annual priorities become the elements of the strategic plan that we are going to have laser-like focus on as a governance team, and then of course for our district leadership team at large. So there are the 6 goals, and you'll see as I briefly share about each of the annual priorities, we've connected how the annual, we've made the link between the annual priority and which strategic plan goal it's connected to. Next slide, Mr. Bassinet. Annual priority number 1 then is to redesign our middle school programming. We know how essential that is given the difficult work that we did in the late spring, connected to our strategic goal around student achievement, learning, and access. Go ahead. Why? What's the long range impact of that annual priority is that we want to improve every student, every middle school student should have an improved experience in our middle schools. And that's true for our middle school students and of course, subsequently their families. Go ahead, Mr. Bassinet. Our second annual priority, you'll recall, is going to be focused on the development of a multi-tiered system of support. This is really a focus on both behavioral and academic intervention. Again, it's connected to our goal 1 in our strategic plan, of course, around student achievement, learning, and access. Why this focus on the multi-tiered system of support? Go to the next slide, please, Mr. Bassinet. The long-range impact we're seeking as we focus on that work for this year is that we want to ensure all students have consistent access to academic and behavioral interventions. And we want that to be true across the system, not at some schools, at some grade levels, but TK-12 at all NVUSD schools. Go ahead. Annual priority 3, something I think this board is super passionate about is making sure that we attain that TK-12 mathematics program alignment. There's been a lot of preliminary work through the task force. You all have been hearing about that over the course of the last couple of years. And this is the year where we want to see implementation around that alignment. And so again, you can see the connection around annual priority 3 is a way to operationalize strategic plan goal number 1, student achievement, learning, and access. So those are and why? We chose this as a governance team because we're committed to improving TK-12 mathematics program and student mathematics achievement outcomes in the district. We know that math can be a real gatekeeper for future opportunity for our students, and we want to remove all barriers for all kids. So we're going to work really hard. And you'll, we have, I didn't report out, we do have success indicators articulated for each of these. And in the success indicators, that's where we'll bring evidence to the board around our accomplishments around these priorities at the end of the year or towards the end of the year. And we'll be reporting formative progress throughout the course of the year. But you'll see as we lay out some of the success indicators, and you all can recall, is that we really, really want to focus on secondary math grades 6 through 12. It's really, really important to get clear here in NVUSD. Go ahead. The fourth one is around ongoing financial stabilization in a declining enrollment environment. And although our first 3 priorities are focused on student achievement, we know that we have to continue to keep a focus and an eye on ensuring that we're making really good decisions around our facilities and finances, because it's through the stabilization of our financial reality that we can accomplish annual priority 1, 2, and 3 and have excellence in education for our students. So what's our why? Go ahead to the next slide. Ensure, again, NVUSD continues to have the resources necessary to deliver that excellence in education despite declining enrollment, which translates into declining revenues. So we want to keep our eye on that, and we can't lose sight of that in this declining enrollment environment, despite the infusion of state monies. Annual priority number 5, another area I think this board is really, really passionate about. And I'm also really grateful because it's an area that I'm super passionate about. It's the enhanced communication with all stakeholders, continuing to improve our communication. This is clearly linked to our strategic plan goal number 3 around robust communication, community engagement, and advocacy. So we're going to see a lot of work unfold in this annual priority. And why is this important, Mr. Bassinet? Next slide. Because we want to build and enhance NVUSD's reputation in the community by telling the beautiful, amazing stories and how our school system is impacting the lives of so many of our students in a positive manner, while recognizing all of our areas of improvement, and reporting on those improvements to our community as we make them. Next. Last sort of formal annual priority is to identify ideal NVUSD employee competencies and key hiring criteria and guidelines for hiring. As you can see, this annual priority connects to goal 2 around our employee relations and recruiting a talented and diverse workforce as we've laid out in our strategic plan, and also goal 5 around equity-centered leadership and in creating an inclusive organizational culture. And in order to do a lot of the work in the plan that you all adopted late last year, the diversity, equity, inclusion, and talent plan, our human resources team really wants to focus on building sort of a profile of an ideal NVUSD employee. What do those competencies look like, no matter what your position is in the organization? And how do we have consistent hiring criteria against those competencies so that we make sure that, our processes around hiring, recruiting, and retaining retaining high quality employees are really grounded in these values as an organization. And so that we're attracting people who want to work for an employee who values the things that we do. So that's the work of our HR team. And so the why there is that we want to hire, recruit, and retain a talented and diverse workforce. We want the very best for all of our kids across all of our schools. And then go ahead. In addition to those 6 annual priorities, as you can recall, trustees, and for the community that's learning about this for the first time, we also focused on a couple of the California School Boards Association superintendent governance standards. And we chose to focus on promoting the success of all students and supports the efforts of the Board of Trustees to keep the district focused on learning and achievement. I think we've all learned through CSBA that governance teams that focus predominantly on teaching and learning and on student achievement are the governance teams that start to align the organization to be able to move the needle on achievement. And we've been making a lot of tough decisions so that we could be in a position to start focusing on teaching and learning and achievement. And so given that, building on that foundation, we want this year to really breathe life into this governance standard and start balancing our focus and shifting, still having to tune into the facilities and finance, but making sure, and there's our why, balance the organizational focus between facilities and finance with an emphasis on student learning achievement programs and services, because that is our fundamental why we're all here. And then lastly, the second superintendent governance standard that we chose was that works, this comes again right from the California School Boards Association, works with the board as a governance team and assures collective responsibility for building a unity of purpose, communicating a common vision, and creating a positive organizational culture. So, me and my role as superintendent to make sure that I'm fostering and nurturing that, because we know that a school board that works with that unity of purpose, that cohesion, and that clarity can get a lot accomplished for the students in the district in which they serve. So what's our why there, Mr. Bassinet? Next slide. We want to strengthen our governance team as we move forward from being a more newly formed team, given that we have 3 new trustees who don't feel that new anymore. You're newish, I guess, to becoming a more experienced, familiar one that's focused on accomplishing our agreed upon priorities, those 6 priorities that we laid out. So I really want to thank the school board for their work in late June. The feedback that we've received from our leadership team as we share these annual priorities is they feel that it is a real gift from the governance team that they get to work with such clarity. Like there's so much work to be done in a school district as you aim to do the large scale improvements that we're seeking on behalf of our students, but to know that between August 2021 and June 2022, that this is going to be where we're going to have the laser-like focus really, positions them to feel more successful, because with that focus, they feel they'll be able to accomplish more. So thank you so much for giving us that clarity as a school board. So thank you for your time and attention this evening. I know it's a slightly longer superintendent report tonight, but I wanted to start our governance year strong and grounded in that critical work. I know that 21-22 is going to be filled with lots of joy, excitement, progress, and success for NVUSD students, families, and staff. And with that, I'd like to now invite my assistant superintendents to give their first reports of this new academic year. So let's begin with Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Rob Manguala.
Thank you, Dr. Massetti. Thank you for the opportunity to update the board and the community The dating and assessment team have been collaborating with the Instructional Services Division in support of annual board priority 2, development of the multi-tiered system of support. ARIES has now been configured to allow teachers to document research-based tier 1 interventions and supports in the classroom, and allows teachers to easily make a referral to the MTSS team when tier 2 or tier 3 interventions may be needed. MTSS teams are able to process referrals directly in ARIES and document tier 2 and tier 3 interventions along with progress notes. The new configuration allows us a system to closely monitor students who need academic, behavioral, social, emotional, or attendance supports throughout the school year. In support of annual board priority number 4, ongoing financial stabilization in a declining enrollment environment, the business office is working closely with all divisions of the district to implement the new funding opportunities found in the budget trailer bill, also known as AB 130. Just some of these opportunities include additional funding for tutoring and after-school care, funding for food services, and funds to help students meet A to G requirements. On the enrollment side, we're syncing enrollment daily. While our numbers right now are a little lower than we expected, we'll need to wait until we get to the first 15 days of the school year to have a working number in terms of enrollment for that year. On the technology side, we're pursuing something really exciting. It's additional funding to provide students with an extra device to keep at home to help with homework, learning, and so forth. They'll also have the ability to potentially obtain a Wi-Fi hotspot. As part of the application process for these funds, we'll be sending out a survey for all families to inquire about their need. This concludes my report.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Manguala, and right to work on that annual priority around MTSS. So that's great to hear that we're configuring our student information system to track interventions. Next, we have Assistant Superintendent Ms. Dana Page, who oversees the Human Resources Division.
Good evening, President Gonzalez Maras, Board of Trustees, and Dr. Massetti, student board member, and the community. So while much of the district slows down in July, HR just gets going in July. It really heats up and we get to work doing a lot of hiring. And you can see that from tonight's personnel document. There's tons of new employees represented on there, and then some new positions for some of our current employees. So I'd just like to take this opportunity to acknowledge HR teams who were responsible for this tremendous amount of work and just give you a brief summary of their accomplishments. Our certificated team consists of Mary Jarecki, Roseanne Crandall, Dee Dee Lockett, and Domine Marcus, who collectively supported the various hiring managers to recruit, interview, select, and sign on only just in the month of July, 10 new teachers, 4 counselors, a new speech language pathologist, and a credentialed nurse. We also were able to offer 12 extra periods for existing teachers and counselors, and 9 of which were earmarked as additional learning or counseling support for students at the secondary level to help support them as they return back to school. And this is being funded through the Extended Learning Opportunities funding. Also, we have an amazing classified HR team who consists of Nancy Crane, Maria Lara, and Ellie Pena Tamayo. And together they completed 4 promotions, 8 new hires, including the opportunity to bring back 4 laid off childcare workers. And they also executed on the increased hours to 23 employees. 14 of these employees were library services providers who are now going to be able to extend library hours for students at all campuses, where students can then go and have extra support with homework and with literacy, have more time getting their hands on books. So we're very excited about that. We still have a few more positions that we're working on, but with 9 working days left before the first day of school, we're in very good shape. So all of this work ensures that we have high quality staff providing services to our students. And I'm so proud of our team and what they've accomplished this July in preparation for a great school year. Thank you. This concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Page, and thank you for all the hard work in HR to make sure that our positions are filled for the 21-22 school year. Next, we have Mr. Mike Pearson, Assistant Superintendent of Operational Services.
Good evening, President Gonzalez Maras, NVUSD Board of Education trustees, Dr. Massetti, student representative, and members of the NVUSD community. Thank you for the opportunity to provide each of you with an update on operational services. Tonight, my comments will focus on the planning, logistics, and adjustments related to COVID-19 and the reopening of NVUSD schools for the 21-22 school year. These actions are all meant to ensure student and staff safety, along with making sure the student and staff experience is positive for teaching and learning to occur throughout the school district. So to review, with transportation, the routes have been set for the 21-21 school year and will resume regular service. Transportation routes are being bid with the bus drivers as part of our agreements in the CSE collective bargaining agreement. In regards to COVID-19 safety protocols, students and staff riding a school bus will all be required to wear a mask while riding on the NVUSD school bus and or charter bus. Physical distancing on the bus will occur to the greatest extent possible, given the number of riders on a bus. And additionally, operable windows will be opened slightly to improve airflow. Lastly, the interior school buses will be disinfected nightly. On the operations and custodial side, recently the CDC and the CDPH shared that the risk of transmission of COVID-19 from services is extremely low. Following the most recent guidance, cleaning schedules have been adjusted slightly to disinfect surfaces in all classroom spaces nightly. However, head and day custodians will continue to wipe down high-touch surfaces in each campus, along with frequent monitoring of student restrooms throughout the school day. Custodial staff will also make sure that every campus has sufficient personal protective equipment, such as student and staff face masks, gloves, hand sanitizer, disinfecting wipes, alcohol wipes, mobile hand sanitizer stands, etc. And lastly, cleaning schedules will be reviewed with all custodial staff in preparation of the upcoming school year. From the maintenance side, specifically HVAC, all HVAC units are set to run continuously to pull in as much fresh air as possible, and doors and windows that are operable can be opened as needed. Filter replacements will happen every 3 months from our HVAC units, as opposed to our normal 6-month change, and air purifiers are being placed in most classroom and spaces where students and staff interact. The exception of our schools with our new HVAC systems that have a MERV 13 rating, which is the top of the line HVAC unit available. In addition, we'll make sure that all classrooms have wall-mounted hand sanitizers available. There are also barrels outside wall mounted hand sanitizers for outside use. Plexiglass will continue that we placed last year for staff will continue to be in place for the time being. And then the amount of signage that we put up around campuses related to COVID-19 best practices will remain up for the foreseeable future as well. With food service, there's no need to limit, with the new guidance, there's no need to limit food service approaches to single-use items and or packaged meals. This does include salad bars. School sites are going to be promoting hand washing and sanitizing before and after eating. They will be maximizing physical distance as much as possible while the students are eating, using additional spaces either outside of the cafeteria and or in classrooms or gyms to help facilitate the distancing. And then as a reminder, and this is for all the NVUSD community, is that meals are free to all students for the 21-22 school year, regardless of your income level. Finally, COVID site school 19 safety plans are being asked by each school site to develop them. So each school site will update their COVID-19 school site specific protection plan, which is very similar to what all school sites completed last year. And once this is completed, they will post this on their website. Vaccination clinics will also be happening in the very near future. We are collaborating with Napa County Public Health to use NVUSD school sites for vaccination sites. So upcoming will be Phillips Elementary School on August 10th from 4 to 6 p.m. in their multipurpose room to receive your first dose. And your second dose you'll receive on August 31st from 4 to 6 p.m. again at the Phillips Elementary School multipurpose room. And then on August 11th at Harvest Middle School from 4 to 6 p.m. you can receive your first dose in the cafeteria, and the second dose on September 1 from 4 to 6 p.m. as well. And again, that's for Harvest in their cafeteria. More locations and dates to follow in the near future. And if you'd like to register, you go to myturn.ca.gov to register to get a vaccination. They will also take walk-ups. Finally, the NVUSD operational services team is ready to adjust as the guidance changes. Again, in order to ensure student and staff safety, plus to make sure the student and staff experience is positive for teaching and learning to occur throughout the school district. This concludes my report tonight.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pearson, and the work of your team, all that hard work in making sure that our campuses are ready for our students to have a successful and safe school year. And last, certainly not least, tonight is Assistant Superintendent Ms. Pat Andrew Jennings, who oversees the Instructional Services Division.
Thank you, Dr. Massetti. Good evening, President Gonzalez-Maras, board trustees, student board member, and NVUSD community. The Instructional Services Division had a marvelous and phenomenal summer hosting students at all levels to connect and engage with learning. After 6 weeks of programming across 11 elementary school campuses, Camp NVUSD came to a successful end last Friday on July 30th. Feedback has been incredibly positive from students, parents, and teachers. The tiered support approach to programming allowed us to differentiate the levels of intervention based on student need, with programming ranging from full day 4-week sessions to 2-week half-day enrichment programs. This was a collaborative effort requiring the support of all NVUSD elementary schools and departments, along with NCOE. Special thanks to my colleague, Mr. Pearson and Gloria Aguilar, and the custodial teams at the host school sites who went above and beyond to work around students and staff on their campuses. At the middle and high school, students had the opportunity to engage in the arts and STEM programs during the summer. In partnership with the Napa Valley Education Foundation Music Connection, students participated in band and string music camps. We also had 278 middle school students participate in ID Tech camp, which included opportunities to learn coding using C++, Python, and JavaScript. The Scholar Series launched this summer with Dr. Victor Rios at Valley Oak. Over 30 students who attended Summer Credit Recovery completed the 2-week course to learn about being a leader and how the positive choices you make show your love for your family. Some of the students who participated will become members of the newly formed Student Advisory Council. In July, related to Board Priority 1, members of the Napa Valley Language Academy, Pueblo Vista Magnet Elementary School, Harvest Magnet Middle School, and River Middle School communities came together along with Principal Alejandra Uribe, led by newly appointed Director Monica Reddy, to work on the development of the mission for the new Middle School Language Academy. Director Reddy and Principal Uribe hosted community information sessions, one in Spanish and one in English, that provided an update on the visionary work and collected feedback from families and staff through an interest survey. The mission of the Middle School Language Academy will be co-constructed with community input and presented to the board in late August. Our students who received intensive special ed services participated in 19 successful days of instruction focusing on student growth in relation to their IEP goals. 140 students, TK through post-secondary, attended classes at Vintage High and Snow. And again, we want to thank maintenance and operations for supporting all of the equipment moves that were necessary, cleaning and all the cleaning that was necessary, along with the food services department to make sure our students were well fed. On another note, directly related to HR, we are fully staffed for certificated teachers and thrilled about that. And work closely, and we will continue to work closely with human resources to fill a few open classroom instructional support positions. In relationship to board priority number 2, which is focused on the effective implementation of MTSS, over the summer, 35 NVUSD educators virtually attended the California MTSS Summer Professional Learning Institute, and they left inspired and motivated to put their learning into action for this upcoming school year. Also, over 25 of our elementary SEL champions received 2 intensive days of training earlier this week in Toolbox Project, our newly adopted SEL and life skills curriculum. These certified district trainers will now train all elementary teachers at their respective sites in this exciting new program, which develops a common social emotional language to support our shared humanity and our individual differences in the Napa Valley Unified School District. Also, as we prepare to welcome students back to in-person learning, we are working closely with Napa County Public Health, site leaders, and health services teams to understand and operationalize most recent COVID guidance. Director Mike Mansway, along with Assistant Superintendent Mike Pearson, led a parent information session on Tuesday, August 2nd, regarding COVID-19 safety. And Director Mansway is working with Napa County Public Health to coordinate the vaccination clinics that Mr. Pearson shared with you earlier. I want to take this opportunity to share information regarding 2 legislative bills that were enacted in July that impact our students and programs. Mr. Bassinet, can you please pull up the slide presentation? I want to briefly preview the changes and impacts of this new legislation. Next slide, please. There were 2 bills, Assembly Bill 104, which focused on retention policies, the grading policies around pass and no pass, and then also a graduation exemption. This bill was signed July 1 of 2021. There was also Assembly Bill 130, which was provided guidance around independent study and the requirements around offering independent study as an alternative to in-person learning. This was signed July 9th, and we received guidance around mid-July, on how to implement independent study with this new guidance. Next slide, please. So with AB 104, in terms of retention, what it does is allow parents or guardians of students enrolled in kindergarten through 11th grade during last school year to request retention of their child if their child has deficient grades for at least 1/2 of their coursework. And what that means, Mr. Bassinet, next slide, is that deficient means that they received a D or an F or a grade of, at the elementary level, of 1. And if that's the case, then they can put a request in to ask for retention. And then that requires us to hold consultation meetings. And during the meetings, these are the things that we're going to do. We're going to talk about what some of the options are for learning recovery options and supports. We're going to look at data. We're going to review the retention research that indicates that retention is not an effective strategy to improve student academic achievement. In the very end, though, it's the LEA. We are the ones, NVUSD makes the final decision about whether or not we feel that the retention is appropriate. This aligns with our current board policy. And then we have to make sure we notify parents within 10 days of this parent meeting of our decision around retention. Next slide, please. Also, a part of AB 104 is pass or no pass. Students have the option to request that a grade be changed from a letter grade to a pass or no pass grade. And so what that means, next slide, Mr. Bassinet, is that there is no limitation on the number or types of classes, and this only applies to high school. They want to make sure that it has no impact, a negative impact on a student's GPA, and then it does not indeed have any impact on a student's GPA. And what we have to inform parents of is that the CSUs are accepting pass and no pass as part of the transcripts, but UCs have not officially said that they would accept that as a grade in a class that was A to G required. We notified parents on August 2nd regarding their ability to request this grade change, and students can request this. They have until August 17th to request this change. If they don't request by August 17th, we don't have to grant it if they request by that. But if they request by August 17th, we have 15 days to notify parents and to make that grade change request. For example, if a student received a D in an English class, they could request a pass, no pass grade, which a D is still considered passing. That would change that D to a pass. Next slide, please. AB 104, graduation. This allows for students at that were high school seniors last year or 11th graders last year to meet the California standards for graduation as opposed to the NVUSD standards for graduation. Next slide, please. And so we have identified all of our 11th and 12th graders who are not on track for graduating based on their current transcripts. And then what the bill requires is that we exempt all additional coursework beyond the state requirements, and that we provide opportunities for students to complete the graduation requirements through credit recovery or a possible 5th year, which we typically do anyway. It's part of our policy. Next slide. So what are the differences between NVUSD graduation requirements in the state of California? I highlighted the most significant or the significant differences. NVUSD requires 4 years of English, state of California only 3. We require 3 years of math, state of California 2 years of math. And then we also require 2 years of world language, and the state of California requires 1 year of world language or CTE or visual and performing arts. And then there's no elective credit required to graduate. And we had 31 students over the summer who elected to take the AB 104 waiver and graduate under the state of California graduation requirements. Next slide, please. The other bill that passed was AB 130, which is focused primarily on independent study. And what this bill does is requires us to make available to students whose health would be put at risk by in-person learning as determined by the parent or guardian. So we have to offer independent study as an option for students who where health would be put at risk. The bill also distance learning has gone away. The idea of the way we did distance learning or hybrid learning, that has gone away. And this is the replacement that the state of California has provided us. Next slide, please. So there are requirements that they put in place. We have to, that districts could have asked the county to provide the service of independent study. We're fortunate at NVUSD that we already have an independent study program. We could have applied for a waiver, declared financial hardship, but none of those are the case in our case. We have to notify parents, and they have a right to a request a conference. And we held the information night that many of you attended last night, and we had to provide them information about enrolling, disenrolling, and re-enrolling in independent study. And on tonight's board agenda is updated board policy that's aligned with AB 130. And one of the sort of unique pieces of this legislation is that we have to transition once a parent requests that they want maybe independent study is not the fit that they thought it would be. We have 5 days in which to place them back, place them in another school. We will obviously aim for their school of residence, but if there's not space available, then it would be the nearest closest school. Next slide, please. The requirements around leveled synchronous and asynchronous were spelled out in AB 130. Kindergarten through 3rd grade require daily synchronous instruction. We're offering 1 hour of synchronous instruction 5 days a week for students who are enrolled in independent study and actually it's TK through 3rd grade. And then 4th through 8th grade has weekly synchronous instruction. So it's 1 hour a week, and then a daily check-in. And then for 9th through 12th, weekly synchronous instruction. So they have 1 hour a week where they meet with their teachers, and then they get independent work to do for the rest of the time. We're required to do a written agreement with families, and then a daily documentation of instruction, because for independent study, we acquire ADA based on the work completed, not just simply attending class. So that's really important that we have evidence of student engagement and we track their work, which is what independent study currently does as part of their practice. Next slide, please. And they require a tiered re-engagement plan, which is similar to what we used last year for all of our students. But in this case, if students miss 3 times or absent 3 or more times during the day or the week, depending on which level they are, then we would have to institute this re-engagement plan, and we would have to progress monitor with the teachers and make sure that the work that they're completing is appropriate. And then students who have who are special ed or have an IEP, they have to have, students who are in special ed have to hold an IEP meeting to see that the independent study is an appropriate placement for them. And finally, synchronous and asynchronous instruction is, this independent study is for longer than 15 days. In the past, we've had short-term independent study, which was typically 5 or more days. Now it's 3 or more days, and this independent study program is for 15 days or longer. That students would have to sign up for. Next slide. And finally, I just love this picture. The joy that these 2 young ladies send out is just always makes me happy. So that concludes this part of the report. Mr. Bassinet, can you go ahead and take down the slides? And lastly, we look forward to welcoming staff and students back with joy and love and care. And as we reconnect and re-engage with each other, thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much for all the hard work happening in the instructional division, the excellent programming that was offered in the summer, and now sort of all the translating of these state mandates. I do want everybody to know that, we've been sort of at the will of the state. This information and these specific guidelines have just come to us. And so I want to thank the instructional team for their quick translation of those guidelines and implementing it to make sure that we have compliant programming for this fall. So that concludes staff reports. I know it was lengthy, but we wanted to start out strong with the right information for the school board this year.
May I say something? I just hope we have a lot of parents watching who understand that our high school graduation requirements are more rigorous than those of the state. The Napa Valley Unified School District has higher standards. Got that? Thank you.
Trustee Waters / our previous high school English teacher.
Well, you know, I had students
Fair enough.
transfer from other counties into my class, and they were kind of shocked up at what they had to do.
Yeah. Thank you, Trustee Water. All right, we're now moving to the next item of our agenda. And this is the approval of consent agenda.
Yes, I would like to pull item H4C, and then I would move to approve the rest.
So we're pulling item H4C. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Trustee Dooley. But before I move forward, do I have any public comment on the other items on the consent agenda? Mr. Bassinet?
Yes, we do have one public comment. I'll allow Justin.
This is Justin Ho, and I know all the school in 1997 and 2017, and I want to just wish you all welcome back for a long vacation. And one thing I want to say for shout out is Bree Dawson Way, very nice color over there. So I wanted to wish you all welcome back for summer break. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Do I have any other speakers, Mr. Bassinet?
There is no other public comment.
Okay, so we had a first and a second. Vera, if you could conduct roll call, please.
Yes, student board member,
Aye.
trustee Gonzalez Mares,
Aye.
trustee Jankowicz,
Aye.
trustee Gracia,
Aye.
trustee Ricer,
Aye.
trustee Water,
Aye.
trustee Shu,
Aye.
trustee Dooley.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vera. So now let's go to item H4C.
Yes, this was one of 3 items on the current agenda that I think we could do better in making more clear in the future, rather than attaching the master SELPA contract. I think it would be better if we instead attach the individual service agreements, which we're being asked to approve, attached to the agenda. So I think that would be a change that would add a lot more clarity to what's happening. So instead of the master SELPA contract, the actual contract that we're approving.
Sandra Jennings, would you like to address that?
Yes, I actually would. One of the, after sort of looking into sort of why we don't attach the individual service agreements, is that a previous board had asked that those not be attached because they include student names. And so those are actually signed and held within business services. And if we can find a way to attach them without including student information, then we can do that. But that is the reason why they're not currently attached to the master agreement.
Could we not simply redact the name of the student?
We can. There's quite a few of them, so we can do that.
And then I would move to approve.
Second.
First by trustee Gracia, second by trustee Dooley. Vera, if you could conduct roll call.
Yes, student board member,
Aye.
trustee Gonzalez Mares,
Aye.
trustee Jankowicz,
Aye.
trustee Gracia,
Aye.
trustee Ricer,
Aye.
trustee Water,
Aye.
trustee Shu,
Aye.
trustee Dooley.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vera. All right, so we are now going into items I, which is our presentations and discussion items. Item 1A, presentation of West Ed English Learner Program Review. So
Thank you, President Gonzalez Maris. We are eager to present the comprehensive assessment of our English Learner Program performed in partnership with West Ed in March and through May of 2021. This assessment is the first step in the process of crafting a new English Learner Master Plan. The West Ed report provides us with baseline data that we can use to measure our progress as we implement the soon-to-be co-constructed English Learner Master Plan. At this time, I would like to introduce our two presenters from West Ed who have guided our work in the assessment of our English Learner Program. Dr. Rachel Laganoff and Dr. Martha Palacio. Mr. Bassinet, can you please bring up the slide presentation? I believe Dr. Palacio is going to start the presentation.
That's right. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Ms. Andrew Jennings, and good evening, Madam President, members of the Board of Education, Superintendent Musetti, Student Board Member, and NVUSD community. I think that I'll just say next slide, if that's okay. And next slide. Thank you. It is a pleasure to be here to share our findings from the English Learner Review with the NVUSD Board of Education and stakeholder community. I want to first say how pleased we are when a school district seeks us out to conduct these reviews, because it means that English learners are a priority in the district. Over the past few months, Rachel and I have worked closely with a planning team composed of Pat Andrew Jennings, Matt Manning, Peter Hartnack, and Monica Reddy to plan, organize, and carry out this extensive review of the instructional programs and supports you have in place for English learners. I want to take this opportunity to thank them for their commitment to this review and for their collaboration and leadership. Tonight, we'll share our final results from the EL program review, as well as our recommendations. To begin, the questions we asked in this review fall into four main categories. They are, who are NVUSD's English learners and how are they performing on key metrics? How are English learners experiencing schooling? What professional learning opportunities have been made available to teachers of English learners? And how are parents experiencing engagement with their children's schools? Next slide. There are 5 research-based principles that we at West Ed consider to be the foundation of quality instruction for English learners. For us, high-quality instruction for English learners is possible when the following principles are present: academic rigor, high expectations, engaging English learners in quality interactions, a purposeful focus on language, and a quality curriculum. The review focused on 3 of these principles: academic rigor, quality interactions, and a purposeful focus on language. I'm not going to go into these principles specifically for lack of time, but they are defined in the final report if you'd like to learn more about them. We consider all 5 of these principles to be the bedrock of any quality program for English learners. Next slide, please. It's important to situate any work that is done in the context of NVUSD's strategic plan. Luckily for us, the EL review is aligned with the student learning achievement and access goal. Next slide, please. I want to say a quick word about West Ed. West Ed is a nonprofit organization that provides a variety of services to educators in schools, districts, and state departments of education throughout the country. Our mission is to work with the education community to promote excellence, achieve equity, and improve learning for children, youth, and adults. Rachel and I are both part of English Learner and Migrant Education Services at West Ed, where we partner with schools and districts to provide customized, research-based professional learning, technical assistance, research, and evaluation opportunities to develop the capacity of educators who serve English learners. Next slide, please. An English Learner Program Review is an opportunity for the district to consider the current status of programs, policies, and practices for English learners. This is done through multiple lenses. We do it by examining existing student data. We do it by conducting guided observations in classrooms, by conducting English learner student shadowing, by collecting survey data from various stakeholders, by conducting interviews with key district staff, and by listening to what parents, academic specialists, and students have to say. Next slide. The English Learner Review was undertaken as a collaborative process between WestEd and various teams of educators in NVUSD. In our experience, school districts are more likely to learn and make changes as a result of the review if they serve as partners through key activities in the review process. By engaging multiple layers of NVUSD educators in the review process, 37 people throughout the district now have a common understanding of the current state of affairs. And moving on. Next slide, please. In terms of our timeline, as Ms. Andrea Jennings said, we've been working since February in various data collection and analysis activities. And we'll move on. Now I'd like to dive into some of the data that provides a backdrop for this review. What do existing data tell us about English learners in NVUSD? Next slide, please. First of all, 44% of all students in NVUSD are English learners or former English learners. 21% of students are currently English learners. The vast majority of these students come from homes where Spanish is the primary language. Not all English learners are the same. In the report, we divide the population of English learners into several different categories: newcomers, general English learners, and long-term English learners. Newcomers are typically students who have been in the United States for up to 2 years. They're very recent arrivals. General English learners are those who are not recent arrivals to the US and have been English learners for less than 5 years. Long-term English learners are those English learners who have been in the English learner category for 5 or more years. As a general guide, the goal is to have students exit English learner status through a process called reclassification before they reach the 5-year mark. In examining this data, we noticed that the proportion of general English learners stays pretty consistent from transitional kindergarten to grade 2, hovering at about 40% of the student population within each grade. Beginning in grade 3, we see a slight decline in the percentage of general English learners and a slight increase in the number of reclassified English learners. This is good. In 3rd and 4th grades, students begin to be reclassified at a greater rate than in earlier years. However, students who are still not reclassified by the end of 4th grade become long-term English learners in 5th grade. This is because once a student has been in the EL category for 5 or more years, they're considered a long-term English learner. One other finding is that in grades 5, 6, and 7, there is still a large proportion of long-term English learners, which indicates that they are not developing the language and literacy proficiency they need in order to attain rigorous grade level standards. Next slide, please. As explained in the report, the LPAC is the annual test given to English learners in the state of California to assess growth in English language proficiency. The LPAC assigns English learners to a level 1 to 4 based on their level of English proficiency, level 1 being the lowest and level 4 being the highest. In looking at NVUSD's LPAC data for the last year that it was available, school year 2019-2020, most English learners were found to be at LPAC levels 2 and 3. However, about 15 to 23% of English learners were found to be in level 1 in grades 8 through 12. This implies that there is a strong need for intensive English language development services to be provided to these students. In terms of academic achievement, English learners perform far better than their English only peers. far below, excuse me, I'll start that again. In terms of academic achievement, English learners perform far below their English-only peers at every grade level in both the ELA and math portions of the state assessment. Reclassified students, by contrast, those students who have exited out of English learner status, do much better. Interestingly, those students who have a home language background other than English but were never classified as English learners perform better than their English-only peers. Next slide, please. So in the next few slides, we're going to focus on English learners' experiences in schools. I'll share findings from classroom observations and student shadowing, as well as information from our student survey and focus groups. Next slide, please. Classroom observations focused on 3 principles of quality instruction: academic rigor, quality interactions, and a purposeful language focus. What we found was that quality instruction was most apparent at the elementary grades, less apparent in the middle school grades, and least apparent in high school. Of the 3 principles we looked for, the one that was observed most frequently in classrooms was academic rigor. Yet, despite this, we found that English learners didn't always receive the support in the form of carefully scaffolded instruction that they needed in order to benefit from rigorous activities. In terms of opportunities for students to develop proficiency in the academic uses of English, or what some people call academic language, students in the classrooms we observed were generally not engaged in these experiences. Next slide, please. Aside from classroom observations, we also examined data from shadowing English learners. A total of 23 English learners from all 3 grade spans were shadowed for a period of 2 hours. English learners who were shadowed represented a variety of English proficiency levels. Members of the expanded leadership team, again, who were employees of the district, were asked to mark whether students were engaged in academically rigorous activities or quality interactions. And they did this over 12 10-minute segments. What we found is that across all 12 10-minute segments observed, students we shadowed were engaged in academically rigorous activities 56% of the time, and they were engaged in quality interactions just 20% of the time. Taken together, data from classroom observations and student shadowing led us to conclude that the level of engagement of English learners in high-quality classroom activities can be improved. Next slide, please. In terms of what we learned from surveys administered to English learners in grades 6 and above, students indicated that they have high hopes for themselves and that in addition to doing well in school, they have the desire to further their education by receiving a university degree. Among respondents, more than 75% of students agreed that they want to be successful in school, that education is an important part of their life, and that they want to pursue college. In general, 85% of the 111 students who participated in the survey expressed an understanding of the connection between doing well in school and being successful in life. Next slide, please. We had the privilege of conducting 2 focus groups with English learners throughout the district. One group was made up of middle school students and the other was made up of high school students. One important trend we noticed was that most middle school students mentioned wanting to no longer have to take ELD as a goal. In essence, what they were saying was, we're tired of taking ELD. We want to be considered regular students and we want to have the opportunity to take other courses. One student in particular mentioned having begun to study the violin in middle school, but because of the fact that ELD takes the place of an elective in middle school, she had to give up the violin the next year in order to continue her ELD requirement. Interestingly, these very students did not know what they needed to do or achieve in order to successfully be reclassified. They don't understand the multiple criteria that must be met in order to become fluent English proficient. This should change. The final thing I will mention about students' perceptions is that English learners generally had high opinions of their teachers and felt that they did a lot to ensure their success. When one student was asked to elaborate, she mentioned that her teacher at times gives her a pass on completing some of her work if it's too difficult for her. Now, this is not at all representative of all students' experiences, but I want to emphasize that this might well indicate what receiving help looks like in the eyes of students and how it needs to be redefined for them and for their teachers. And with that, I'll pass it over to my colleague, Rachel Loganoff.
Thank you, Martha. I'm going to continue with 2 more sets of findings, and then I'll present our recommendations. So on the next slide, we're going to move on to looking at what we learned about what professional learning opportunities are available to teachers and principals across the district. On the next slide, we see results or a small sampling of results from the teacher survey. About 154 teachers participated in the survey. There were a large number of questions on multiple topics, and this is just a sampling of some of the questions around professional learning. Excuse me, approximately slightly over half of the respondents said that they received professional learning that's useful. Only about 40% said that they received coaching or mentoring or the right amount of professional learning to successfully serve English learners. Just under half believe the district supports their growth in knowledge and practice to ensure English learners progress linguistically and academically. So these results are fairly low. And they're also contrasted to what we heard from the open-ended comments in the teacher survey and also focus groups that we held with elementary and secondary principals, that they want to have more professional learning. They value professional learning to help them grow, to be able to better serve English language learners, and they just aren't getting the professional learning that they would like. On the next slide, we're going to see some of the results from the focus groups that we conducted with district staff. This was focus groups and interviews. So we had focus groups or interviews with 8 district staff. These included the academic specialists and the migrant coordinator, who are some of the providers of professional learning in the district. So we heard that a variety of professional learning events are offered to teachers across the district, including district-wide professional learning days. There are also ongoing professional learning opportunities for teachers that include things like professional learning communities. And so there are offerings across the district for professional learning for English learners. However, overall, the professional learning that is provided is piecemeal, and it varies across grade levels in schools. So there's a lack of consistency and a lack of consistency both across time and across the different grade levels in schools in the district. So the participants in these focus groups and interviews expressed that they would really like to see, or they feel that there's a need for district-wide professional learning for all teachers and principals that is comprehensive and sustained and has a unified, consistent focus and vision. And also that site administrators are positioned as instructional leaders as part of this consistent and comprehensive professional learning. Okay, on the next slide, I'm going to move on to what we found from the parents and how the parents and other caregivers are experiencing engagement with schools and the district. On the next slide, again, we had a lot of surveys. So this survey was the parent survey. About 137 parents responded to the survey. Again, there were multiple questions in multiple topic areas, and this is a sampling. So the positive outcome of the survey is that a large majority, 3/4 or more, of the parents who responded feel welcome at the school that their children attend. They have opportunities to talk with their child's teachers, and they receive communication in a language they understand. So this is good news. One of the areas that had lower percentages responding was in the area of receiving information about what is required for their child to enter college, or about financial aid for their high school child to attend college or university. Especially with the last question that was focused on high school students, but also for the one about what's required for their child to enter college. Presumably these lower number of responses were based on the parents responding potentially that not applicable or left blank. They may have felt that these questions didn't apply to them. And we wanted to emphasize that awareness of the requirements and readiness for college and career starts in late elementary, and that information that's provided could start in elementary school and definitely needs to be provided throughout middle school and high school. And we saw that of the parents that responded to these questions, just a little more than half said that they were getting this information. So there's the positive findings are that the parents feel comfortable communicating with the school, but we need to see an improvement in communicating to parents what's necessary for their children to meet the aspirations that we saw earlier, that they want to be prepared for college and career, they want to attend college, and they need to know what to do in order to reach that achievement goal. Next slide, please. We also had the pleasure to have a focus group with 13 parents of English learners. We talked about a number of issues and some trends emerged from this discussion. Some of the trends are that the parents that we spoke to value participating in their children's education, and they feel that it's their responsibility to be involved. So we have active parent community that wants to be involved and feels it's important. They also want to be included in decisions that affect their children and are willing to participate in leadership development activities that will allow them to serve as leaders in their schools and the district. And we also heard from the district staff that they are taking steps toward that, and that's recognized that parent leadership is important. Another outcome that we found from the parent focus groups is that the parents expressed awareness that the quality of instruction may vary by school. So they know what's happening in the school where their child attends. They also hear what's happening in other schools, and they're not seeing the same level of quality instruction at every school. So one of the parents specifically mentioned that the school where her child attends, they needed more resources. She didn't feel that the resources for English learners or for students that she knew about were getting the resources that they needed to succeed at school. Parents also expressed ideas about what could be improved around the English language learner programs and English language development instruction. So they already have ideas that they would like to bring forward to helping improve some of the elements of programming that Martha has presented. So one of their ideas is that ELD instruction could be provided before or after school so that it wouldn't take up time during the school day or take up the elective time, and that their peers and teachers could use that time instead for academics and electives during the day. Okay, on the next slide, I'm going to move on to school to parent communications. While we did see the positive communications results from the survey, we also, in our focus groups with principals, heard that a number of parents may not be able to read written communications in any language. So even if the communication is sent in Spanish or other languages, they may not be able to read even in that language. So these parents would benefit from audio messages sent to their phones. And I believe it was mentioned that this had been available previously and had been discontinued. So that's something to look at. In addition, there are, as we saw, like the vast majority of English learners' families in the district speak Spanish, but there are a number of other languages represented. And they also need to receive communications in the languages they speak. So from the data we received from the district from the previous school year, English learners families, about 60 have Filipino as their home language. They're also between 19 and 27 have Vietnamese, Punjabi, Arabic, and we also heard that there are other languages spoken by especially newcomer students So there's a wide variety of languages in the district, and that needs to be paid attention to in the communications as well. Okay, on the next slide, I'm going to move on to the recommendations. So we just presented a small snippet of some of the findings. The full set of findings is in the report that you've received. And then we also mapped out a number of focus areas that came up from the findings. And then the findings were organized by these focus areas, and we organized the recommendations in the same focus areas. So what I'm going to go over next are the recommendations based on all the findings organized in these focus areas. So the first one on the next slide, and I have to pause a second, is in the area of programming and services. And this first one, the first recommendation, is actually an overarching recommendation of what's going to happen next. So it's very important as a next step to develop a comprehensive systemic improvement plan. And this is the master plan that Pat Andrew Jennings mentioned before. So West Ed would be available to continue collaborating with the teams that we brought together for the English Learner Review or assessment, to continue as a continuation to develop this master plan or systemic improvement plan. And it will serve as a roadmap for ensuring high quality English learner programs and services are implemented, monitored, and sustained across the district. So we'll move step by step through developing all of the plans to make sure these things can happen. The rest of the recommendations, starting on this slide and after that, are all going to be incorporated into this planning process. So we want to make sure that we're defining and implementing a high quality designated ELD program consistently across all the schools, incorporating the 5 principles of quality instruction that we've already looked at, designing and implementing programs that address the specific needs of newcomers and long-term English learners. As we heard, these subgroups of English learners may not be having their needs met. We've seen that long-term English learners persist through middle school and sometimes high school, and newcomers, they're very few, but they still need particular services. They arrive in the country, they have very little English language proficiency, and yet especially for those in middle and high school, they need to catch up very quickly and they need particular services. Number 5, establish accountability structures at the school and district levels to monitor English learner program implementation and guide continuous improvement. So what we don't want to happen is that we hand over a plan, you put it on the shelf, and you're done. What we want to see is that this is a living document that once going through the process with us, it will become the guide for everything that's happening in the district for implementing all of the recommendations that we're making in this report. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Another one of the areas that came up as we were analyzing the findings was around equity and access. So we've already heard that students have high aspirations for graduating college and career ready, going to college. In order for them to access the high level of rigor and academics that they need to complete to graduate college and career ready, they need to have a high level also of English language proficiency. So we want to make sure that any support for their English language development and ELD programs happens in an accelerated way, that we don't wait for years for the English learners to gain the proficiency they need to access the high level content. And especially secondary English learners need to have access to the full education program, including electives. So we know that there are requirements for graduating, there are requirements for getting into college that include a wide range, not just of academics, but also electives, and also just for the full participation of the students to feel that they're well-rounded and they can do what they want to do in school. In general, in terms of equity and access, we want to make sure that we're not holding English learners back from participating in the full education program due to their English learner status. Next slide, please. So how do we get the students there? What does it look like to give them access to this high quality instruction that they need? So we want to make sure there's a focus in the secondary grades. So that will be part of the master planning process, is ensuring that there's an initiative targeted to those grades to make sure that they're going to graduate college and career ready and have the quality of instruction they need. We saw at all grade levels from the observations and shadowing that we weren't seeing the quality interactions, which are described in our principles, where students on a daily basis in every class, in every subject, even math, should be interacting, talking, exchanging ideas, gaining ideas from each other. And we recognized that we were observing classrooms in an unusual situation. It was a hybrid classroom. Often the teacher was on the computer screen, the students were on their computer, and it makes it a lot harder to design these quality interactions. It's still possible. So we were looking for ways that it could have been done through the mediation of the virtual learning, and we still weren't quite seeing the level of quality interactions among students that are an indicator of high quality instruction, and build, that's for all students, but also build the language and academic skills that English learners especially need. Another focus for English learners would be looking at the simultaneous development of academic content knowledge and language proficiency. And one way to do this is focusing on purposes and uses of English in academic contexts. So even when English learners are not in their ELD class, they're in their regular content class. If there's a focus on language, they will learn English faster and learn academics faster at the same time. And it also benefits all the students in the class, because focusing on purposes and uses of English in academic context is also good for all the other students. We also want to ensure that even when rigorous activities and high quality academic instruction is happening, that English learners are intentionally supported and scaffolded to build their English language proficiency. So they may not be sorry, I lost my notes, but that's okay, I'll just keep going. English learners need, again, as they're developing their English, they'll still need access to the rigorous academic instruction. And the way to do that is to intentionally design particular scaffolds and supports. And the way teachers can learn how to design those would be through the professional learning, the comprehensive professional learning. And then designing, depending on the student's proficiency, students may need more scaffolding. The scaffolding can go away as soon as they develop higher proficiency. So it's a complex skill for teachers to develop, to learn how to support students adequately and not over support them. And this is what we were seeing was needed in a lot of the classrooms that we observed. Next slide, please. So in terms of professional learning, there's only one recommendation, but it's a huge recommendation. Develop a district-wide English learner professional learning plan for all teachers, principals, and key district staff that is comprehensive, sustained, and has a unified, consistent focus and vision. So that's the charge there. It won't happen all at once. We're not expecting like in a year, we'll have all this done. This will be a plan that's going to, the entire master plan will take place over 3 to 5 years, but especially the professional learning. We'll need to identify what the priorities are for professional learning and gradually build up to this comprehensive type of professional learning. It won't happen all at once, but we'll start right away in year 1 and keep building across the years. And part of the planning process that we'll engage in with our district teams will be looking at where do we want to focus, which schools have the highest need, which grade levels, and we'll develop the plan from there. Okay, the final set of recommendations on the next slide. Oh no, it's not the final set, sorry. Okay, next to final set are around parent and family engagement. So we want to make sure that the engagement strategy for parents and families involves them in decision making. So it's great for them to have input, it's great for them to build leadership, but really engaging them in decision making and designing and implementing school and district programs and policies for English learners is a slightly bigger lift. And that's what we're hearing that the parents want, and the district would greatly benefit from this. We also want to make sure that communication strategies provide accessible and comprehensive information to parents about the post-secondary opportunities. We heard from the district that the schools are expected to be the primary, have the primary responsibility for delivering this information. It needs to be done consistently across all of the schools, clearly the middle schools and high schools, but also even the elementary schools. The thinking about what does it take to prepare for college and career all the way through, starting from especially late elementary through middle school and high school, and have a consistent focus and communication plan around what does that look like, and how do we know that the parents are getting the information they need, and at middle school and high school, how do we know the students are getting the information they need? So this is another sort of long-term planning of looking at how can we improve this and what needs to be put into place to make this happen. Okay, now the final one on the next slide is around additional analyses. So we did some analyses of data from the district, and as soon as you start digging into data, you start seeing, wait, I want to go more into the data and look at other trends. So we are recommending some areas to investigate, and your teams may come up with more. One of them is to look longitudinally at reclassification rates and patterns. So what are the trajectories of students? So we were seeing some trends in the single year of when students start to be reclassified in late elementary, that we still have a large proportion of long-term English learners in middle school. So maybe dig deeper into when students are reclassified, how that's happening, looking at students that are in 3rd and 4th grade as at-risk long-term English learners. If there are students who are English learners in 3rd and 4th grade who have been in the system since transitional kindergarten or kindergarten, they're at risk when they enter 5th grade of continuing to be an English learner, which makes them a long-term English learner. So those are some of the things to look at in the data of how are we using the data to look at what's happening and see, what the ways that instruction and understanding of what the students need can be improved. Another element, one of the elements that we did not focus very much on in this report was English learners with disabilities. And a starting point for that would be looking carefully at the data, comparing English learners with disabilities to the general student population to look for potential trends for over-identification of English learners as having disabilities or under-identification. And this can be based because the student's English language ability can be either confounded and a disability might not be assessed or recognized, or in some cases, students might need to be assessed in their home language. So there are a number of things to look at in this area that we don't go into in the report, but for future analyses, we would recommend. So the final slide is a big thank you to all of you. We have heard that English learners are a priority for the board. They are priority for the district in general, and that is commendable. And it's the starting point, recognizing that they're a priority, recognizing all of the findings that we found through this collaborative review or assessment effort is a starting point to go on the path to developing the master plan or systemic improvement plan to implement the recommendations. And WestEd would be pleased to continue working with our Napa Valley partners in a collaboration to guide you and help you with identifying high leverage strategies, action steps, a 3 to 5 year plan that includes monitoring, oversight, and accountability structures so that you can really implement all of the things that you're seeing that need to be improved. And we are grateful that we had this opportunity to present this report, and we could now take questions.
Before we open it to questions, thank you to the WestEd team for your very comprehensive report. I just wanted to let the Board of Trustees know that typically when WestEd does this type of assessment and plan, it's over the course of one school year. We started, due to COVID, we didn't start our assessment until February in terms of our first initial meetings with the WestEd team, and then started to do the assessment. And then the next phase is the plan of actually digging in and building on the work of the expanded leadership team to complete the plan that we would then implement, that we would bring to the board and then implement. So there are those two phases. Typically, you start the process at the beginning of the school year, work on it, do the assessment, do the plan, and then bring it to the board. But we wanted to give you a report and give you sort of a process of where we are right now, and then as we move forward. And just want to thank West Ed for their partnership, and look forward to future work that would help us to identify those levers that really move the needle for our English learners. And with that, we'll open it up to questions.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm going to do a quick check-in with the board. It's 9:20, and we usually take a little bit of a bio break and stretch a little bit before we go into the discussion and then public comment, and then really, so I'm guessing we're not going to forget very much what was presented. We decided to take a break now, or do you want to go into discussion, public comment, and then take the break? You're okay with that? Okay, so let's do that. Yeah, okay. So just, we're gonna take a quick 5-minute break and then return so that you have our full focus. Not that you wouldn't, but this would allow us to be more present. Thank you. Thank you. We are back now. So finish the presentation and we'll start with questions or comments.
Well, go ahead.
No, please, Cindy.
I just wanted to say that this is, I'd like to congratulate the superintendent for seeing the need for this. This was announced, I think at our last meeting in June of 2020. And then, last year was just completely crazy. So we couldn't get started on it, but this is it. This is a deficiency and we're admitting it and we want to fix it. And I'm speaking as a person who taught ELD for 3 years at Napa High School. And fortunately I'd taken some courses at UC when I was renewing my credentials, so I wasn't flying blind, and I took Spanish, and all my students were Spanish speaking, but yes, I'm well aware that there are many other languages in this school district. And at one point I had a student from Iran who ended up living at our house and knew very little English. And after 2 years at Napa High, she graduated, went to UC Davis, your favorite school, graduated in 4 years with a good GPA. And how did she learn English? Well, she was living with an English teacher who never shuts up. That's me. You have to be verbal in our house, or you're going to die. That's it. And lots of reading, lots of writing, and drama class. So a rich selection of electives can help students. They're not frills. They are practical. The singing, the acting, you making friends who speak English. All of this happens when you're in these electives. So this is what really spoke to me in this presentation. And I think we're being very bold in recognizing something that we need to fix. We're going to do it because we're going to do it. That's it. I'm not going to accept anything less than success. Thank you.
And thank you to West Ed for the presentation. It was a thorough review and assessment of our English Learner Program. The fourth slide, developing a common understanding of high quality instruction for English learners, outlined what was considered the key principles for success. What I found powerful is the application to all learners. So the focus on English learners can become part of the foundational work we are already striving to achieve. To conduct the highest quality work, we as a system must strive to be fair and equitable in carrying out our work, with the end result being impact. This work is not just for this moment. It needs to be constructed and executed in a manner that becomes part of our framework. This is more than just being sustainable. It has to be a part of the fabric of who we are as a system and what we do. This review will define and drive the content and implementation of a comprehensive, systematic improvement plan. This is an opportunity for educational shift and growth in how we approach learning for our ELs. And through these actions, we have the opportunity, as Cindy just stated, to benefit all students. This work will intersect with our district-wide focus on achievement and curriculum alignment. It is a critical time. We are focused on our English learner population, improving academic achievement, middle school enrichment, and providing support for teachers as we address curricular changes as well as strategy and implementation protocols. So with that, a few questions come to mind. We will need, as stated, appropriate support and scaffolding for our teachers so they may execute on this important work. NVUSD is working on infrastructure alignment in a multitude of areas, as well as capacity development. Will we consider having the ability to create expertise within the system so that we can have internal workshops and support protocols in addition to the external support being provided for these professional learning goals? Per this review, and I apologize, you did state at the beginning of the presentation that if we wanted the definition of some of the key principles that we could ask for it. So I am asking for the definition of what determines a quality interaction. And then how are the accountability structures determined? There were percentages about my school has a clear focus on supporting English learners, and I won't go through all of them. But the feedback and stated statistics speak to the belief and importance of our English learners achieving academic outcomes. But it also spoke to, as you addressed, a lack of consistency. The comment regarding individual colleagues designing curriculum it's inspiring, and I mean that genuinely, but it can also lead to a lack of consistency and uniformity in curriculum and a lack of time and planning necessary for those successful outcomes to be achieved. This work will address the issues that have limited our success, and the recommendation in programming and services, as well as equity and access, will challenge the previous conventional wisdom. You are identifying what has not been successful and are acknowledging the importance of the gains that will be made throughout their trajectory. And I appreciate the good work. Thank you so much.
Sure. I would love to answer the question with regard to quality interactions, and then maybe Rachel, you can answer the question regarding accountability. We consider quality interactions to be interactions or student talk that happen around academic topics. So they have to be on an academic topic, an issue, a concept, and the expectation is that there's a purpose for the communication. So students have to be trying to understand something, communicating something to a peer. It has to be authentic communication in a group format. The other important element of a quality interaction is that it needs to be reciprocal. It can't be one-sided. It can't be two people speaking to each other with one person doing all of the talking and the other one just nodding, right? They have to be building on what they each say. If they're in a group, they all have to be contributing to the conversation and responding to one another and co-constructing the conversation. And through that conversation, deepening their understanding of the topic at hand. Also, in addition to being reciprocal, the interaction has to be sustained. So it can't just be one person says one sentence, the next person says a sentence, the next person says a sentence, right? It has to be a sentence or more. It has to be multiple people contributing multiple ideas. It's not a short one sentence kind of interaction. So
the classroom setting has a lot to do with how you can measure those quality interactions. So if the classroom setting doesn't necessarily have group settings, it's a difficult benchmark to measure, I assume.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
And then in terms of accountability, again, one of the things we'll be doing in developing the master plan and mapping out the high leverage strategies and action steps, we'll also be, again, collaboratively determining milestones and metrics and assigning a responsible person for each of these strategies and action steps. So that will be part of a sort of a oversight structure that will be built into the master plan.
And is part of the intent then also to be able to create an infrastructure that allows this work to be sustainable within our own learning community? You guys are setting up the implementation plan, the action plan, but are there going to be professional development opportunities that allow this to be sustainable without having to kind of go back year after year?
And Trustee Jankowicz, I can answer that. Yes, that's indeed the idea, is to build the capacity within our own staff. And part of that work has already begun. You asked the question around quality interactions, and Martha and Rachel provided training to our expanded leadership team on what that definition was and what they needed to look for when they were doing the EL shadowing and the classroom observations. And so some of that training and building capacity among our own staff around identifying what is good instructional practice for English learners has already started. And that started in the spring, and that will be ongoing and making sure that we're building capacity within our own district. I don't know if Rachel or Martha wanted to add to that.
We do have a service that we provide that allows for districts to apprentice their own teachers into the professional development that's aligned to our principles, so that it's a very intensive program. We work with teachers over the course of a year and a half on becoming seasoned presenters of the pedagogical approach that we espouse. And the idea behind that is that they can then become the go-to people, the professional developers within the district who you can go to for more professional development year after year. That is quite an investment. It's absolutely worth it. And our goal is for you not to have to hire us again.
Thank you.
At the end of the plan.
Question, what is the time frame on which we can expect the master plan could be completed?
I think typically the process of between the assessment and the plan is like a year-long process through the school year. So having done the assessment in the spring, I imagine that it's about a half of a year that would take to develop the master plan or the improvement plan. And I believe that's about the timeline that that's been discussed. I don't know if you guys want to add any other additional information to that.
Yeah, the activities definitely would happen in approximately 6 months. Often the actual writing and preparation of the plan can take longer. That's a pretty intensive process too, that we can take a lot of that on as well. So the completion could be like another whole school year, but the initial planning and setting up all of the implementation guide and all of that can happen. I think what we've submitted is September through March, continuing in through June to finish writing, but I don't remember exactly, but along that timeline.
Yeah, I think that was the original proposal.
Okay.
Here, one of the things about NVUSD is that, we are impatient when it comes to results for our students, and we want to, move the needle as quickly as we can. So I know that we'll probably speed that timeline up.
Yep, Trustee Reiser.
Yeah. First of all, I just want to echo what Trustee Waters said. I'm so grateful that we are willing to look at what is a weak area and shine a light on it and not shy away from that. This is a district-wide issue, and our mission is to educate the children of our community, and a good percentage of the children of our community come with an additional set of needs, and we know what those needs are, and there's a lot of research about how to meet those needs, and I'm just so grateful that we're doing it. And I understand, because I spent a lot of years in the elementary classroom teaching English learners, how you get to a point where the program is really fragmented. And it's not from a place of not caring or not paying attention or a place of thinking it doesn't matter to take care of English learners' needs. It really is this sort of fragmentation that happens when you say, oh, well, that school has a lot of English learners, so we should put resources there, or, well, our school hardly has any English learners, so we don't even really need to pay attention to that. And that's how you end up with fragmentation. And then it really can spiral from there. And the other risk that I didn't really come out in the presentation, but I just want to surface is very well-meaning educators can still get confused and think that good teaching is enough to meet English language learners' needs. And it's not. And so it's necessary, but not sufficient. And I just want to thank the presenters for giving such a thorough, comprehensive, and nuanced explanation of kind of where we are. And in particular, I just wanted to draw out the intentionality of scaffolding and supports, and the use of language and giving kids opportunities to talk are just two of the big lifts that we need to get consistent across the district. It's not enough to give rigorous academic lesson planning that's very engaging to English speakers. You have to give the front loading of vocabulary. You have to give the visual supports. And then the other piece that was in the report, but I don't think made it into the slideshow, was the distinction between the ELD time that is designated generally a 30-minute period, but then there's the rest of the day. And so I was really happy to see in your report the focus on the integrated English language development, and just really what we have to do is, and the district is being charged to do, and we have these recommendations, is that piece of professional development, because teachers want to meet the needs of all of their students. And we need to hold them accountable to doing it, no matter whether it's one English learner or half of their class or 3/4 of their class is English learners. But we have to give them the tools and the information and the strategies, because I got my credential in 1995, and this was kind of at the forefront, the research about English learners. It's been a while now, and we have this wonderful resource of the West Ed group bringing your expertise, because we know what to do. We just need to get all the teachers the tools and the training, and get everybody on the same page. So I just wanted to say I'm really grateful that we're doing this. I'm particularly excited about the focus on really making sure we're being intentional throughout the day, and not just in the designated, I checked my box, I did my 30 minutes of ELD, so I'm good now. That's not how it should work in a highly effective classroom. So I don't really have any questions, but I'll get off my soapbox now, but I just wanted to make those comments, and also to say that this is not to say that the current teachers teaching English learners in our district are not working hard and do not have expertise. That's not the case. It just is, you get a lot of fragmentation. And there was the other comment that one of the presenters made about, we want this to be implemented. We don't want it to be a binder on the shelf. And that is a phrase that I have used a lot in meetings here and then in other conversations of the thing that we have to focus on is the implementation, and that it does not become, well, that was a really interesting training. That gave me something to think about for a few hours. And now that's going up with my other professional development experience binders, and then I'll go back to what I was doing before. So I'm just excited and can you tell I'm really jazzed about this, because we need to do it and we know what to do, and we're getting the expert help that we need. And I'm just really grateful on behalf of all the English learners that are really going to benefit from this shift that we're going to make, because I really believe and feel that we're committed as a district to making it to making this change and making it a permanent shift.
So I also echo all the other trustees' comments about how grateful I am for this being a focus for the district. So I was an English learner. I started here in 2nd grade, and I went through the process of getting reclassified. This is a long time ago, of course. So the process was very different. But I do remember the very purposeful, intentional instruction that my teachers had given me, which was, you pull out into groups and you talked in English, and you have a lot of feedback from your peers and from your teachers. And it was just very high quality. And I felt like that really made a huge difference for me to be integrated when I started school in Taiwan in Chinese, and then having to learn a totally different language here. I do want to ask that for some of the further analyses, in addition to identifying English learners with disabilities, maybe also look at how do we identify kids who would qualify for ALPS? Because I think those are the two areas that are very, very underrepresented for English learners. You either miss their disability or you miss their giftedness and need to have different types of instruction to support that both. So I hope that this is going to be one of the directions that will also go towards supporting our students as well. But thank you very much for the research and the presentation.
Yeah, Trustee Dooley.
I don't have a whole lot to add. A couple of my points and questions were addressed by other trustees. I do appreciate the mix of quantitative and qualitative analysis, and also the focus on the qualitative or the quality of the student experience elements that are involved in this report. One of the harder to measure but increasingly important things about learning in general, but especially learning language and for English learners is the quality of their experience in the classroom, their investment and interest in not just the learning the language, but learning the subject matter, learning in the context of English instruction. And I think that goes also to the point that Trustee Water made about having meaningful learning experiences in electives, and something that, you know, as a student, you're excited to go to those classes, and you get to have the opportunity to select them and be invested in that the instruction. So I think, you know, having a connection not just with the quantitative or kind of, I don't know, just having an infusion of that quality of the student experience in the classroom in this plan, I think will be important.
Thank you. I'll just add very similar comments. I do appreciate, although I feel like we're doing lots of thank you to SS, but WestEd, but with no disrespect, I think the thank yous to the board and to the superintendent and the team to want to address this, and that we have committed to not only finance a team qualified to help do the analysis on this, and the execution of that report, that I do think for that process of analysis in terms of how do we go about this, right? I mean, it's a question we've been asking. It's in the numbers, it's in the data, and it just, how do you fully grasp what's in the issue, right? And then are we doing our due diligence as a governance to give direction as to please go and investigate, please go and analyze this, please tell us where are some of those issues, so that we can, as a governance team, look at our, you know, I'm looking at our annual priorities for this year, but it may not be aligned in here. It's in some areas, but I can almost see that in our next conversation next summer, when we see the plan, I can see us putting that as a priority, right? But we need to know what's out there with our students. There's a lot of obviously, I think, moments where it's not surprising for us to see this, right? But it's so important to take the time to gather that data, because we are a data-driven district as well, where we make decisions based on our facts in front of us. So that I'm just really looking at quality information in front of me that can help us, and most importantly, help the staff to draft what Assistant Superintendent Andrew Jennings was mentioning, that the time that it takes to really analyze this and work with the team to see what we can go about doing this with the different collaborative teams that are working on this. My question in terms of additional analysis was more, I keep thinking of like our system, right? Like one criteria that I find, and I don't know, I couldn't find that in the report necessarily, of little, they seem little, but it can change a student's life. Like when you register, enroll your child into the district and you put Spanish as a preferred language, it kind of puts the student in this particular track just because the parents are choosing Spanish as a particular language. And my understanding is that sometimes then the child is sort of flagged like, oh, that must be an English language learner because the preferred language is in Spanish, and just gets. So what are those analyses in terms of like, in terms of the system of some of those structures that are in place, whether they're not intentional, right? I don't think that's the purpose, but unintentionally can create a life-changing event for a student, because parents may not be aware how the school district or the system works and doesn't know until a year or two goes by, right? Like it can get really hard. And so, and that relates back to the data of like how engaged parents are with the schools, how if they feel connected, if they feel that they understand, if they're getting information in their language, right? All of that. So I'm curious about what are those, systems in there that may put a student or, in the family as they're trying to work with their kin in a particular track, if you want to call it that way. So curious about that, and if there's any analysis there or additional work around that. And then I couldn't help but think also of how this connects also with the DEI work that we're doing, right? There's a lot of intersection that occurs there when you're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then we're also talking about our English language learners. There's a lot of, without having to take additional time here, but just lots of life examples that occur that can impact an English language learner because of a staff that may not have received the training and understanding of the dynamics of maybe the home of that child, and understand the diversity and how important it is to create an environment that is inviting and inclusive, that can embrace this, the students' life, and encompasses all the other things that that surround them, and the complexities that it's not just education, but just many of our English language learners are low-income families and are, and many of them are in survival mode, right? So it's all these other dynamics that we need to understand. So I just couldn't help but think that how as our district continues this work, how that intersects, right? And how that, I don't know, we have a particular plan to quantify that. That's hard, but I think it's all of those factors that come into place that can help with the overall culture and the overall goal that we're trying to put together and help our students be set up right for that success. And I think my last comment is that I appreciated sort of that category of like, oh, newcomers and sort of long-term English language learners, and sort of, because it is, when you're an English language learner, it really does depend as to like how many years, how long have you, been in the school district, how long have you been in the country, and just how long have you been faced with that. So I appreciate that sort of ability to kind of dive into the students almost just capturing their English level versus just, oh, you checked the box, therefore you're in this particular track or something. But yeah, I guess that was my hidden question about systems, and sort of how does that play into your analysis or future analysis?
I think Trustee Gonzalez-Morris, I'll start and then see if the team from West Ed wants to join in. But I think you touched on a critical point around the intersection, not only between students who may be English learners, but also struggling economically, but the intersection between all of the different initiatives and plans that we have around English learners, around our diversity, equity, inclusion, around our college and career readiness. Like all of those tie in together with the work that we want to do with our English learners. And tonight they touched on the importance of of families having the information they need earlier in terms of college and career readiness, and and how do you get reclassified, and making sure students understand that. So all of that really connects to all of the plans and the strategic goals that the board has set up for us. And I don't know if Martha or Rachel, you want to add to that?
Well, I will speak to the point on the home language survey and to the tremendous consequences that parents' honest response on that survey can have on their child for the rest of their life. I'll share that when my daughter was in kindergarten, I spoke with a mother who had, she was very clearly fluent in English, educated in US schools, but she was honest in her home language survey, and she chose to reveal that there was some use of another language in the home. And that is an automatic trigger whenever a parent identifies another language as being spoken in the home, that's an automatic trigger for a diagnostic to be given to that student to see if they truly are an English learner or not. And that mother regretted her decision to state that there was another language in the home, because her child scored such that he or she was then determined to be an English learner, and they were forever in that category, and they couldn't get out of that category. As she put it, her child just didn't test well, as coming into kindergarten. So that is an issue that parents have with the home language survey. It's institutional. It's not something that that you have control over at the district level or at the state level. Unfortunately, it's something that all schools have to administer. However, there was work that was started a few years ago on improving the home language survey, and I hope that that's continued. And then the second part of that is that we need better diagnostics. We need better tests so that a child doesn't mistakenly get classified as an English learner when they really have sufficient English to do just fine in school. And tests are getting better all the time. So we can hope that one day that is the case, but there's not a lot that we can do at the local level, unfortunately.
Yeah, and to add on to what Martha said, part of the process, so again, this is defined by the state, by the California Department of Education, the processes that districts follow for identifying English learners. Part of the process includes notifying parents of the student's English language learner status and the programming that they're expected to engage in as part of that status. And the parents have the decision to accept or reject that the student is placed in that program. Also, and then parents are consulted also in decisions about reclassification. So that might be an area for further analysis, as you suggested, that the district look into. Are they following all of the protocols and ensuring that the parents are not only notified, but actively consulted, and that there should be a team that's determining these decisions about English learners. So it's true that we didn't delve into that deeply for this review, but that might be an area to look into for future analyses of how students are identified and the notification and consultation with their parents and families.
Thank you for that additional explanation about, and that's what it's called, the home language survey. Thank you.
Yeah, so I just would like to close this out. I would just want to draw everyone's attention here to close that 44% of our students, that's half of our student population, are either a current English learner or a past English learner. And any of you who are former English learners, reclassified, I'm going to raise my hand. I know we have other ones on the board, and Trustee Chu identified as such as well. It takes a whole lifetime to really truly become proficient in a language. And so just because only 21% of them maintain the English learner status, and the other 20, it's late, so math is slow for me, 23% have been reclassified, that doesn't mean that all of a sudden they've met a success criteria and they, that the concept of intentionally focus on language as part of the instructional experience in the classroom doesn't need to continue to matter. So when you have half your school system either being a past or current English learner, we have to build the organization's capacity to be able to meet the needs of language learning. And it's just the reality of our system. Our kids and our teachers, our staff are on a dual track agenda. The dual track agenda is academic achievement and ongoing language development and proficiency, even once reclassified. And that is a reality for half the kids in the system in NVUSD. So shame on us for taking this long to sort of surface these trends and give it the attention and focus that it deserves and start the process of developing a very focused English learner master plan that'll provide the roadmap for the system on how to build that organizational capacity, because there's not one adult in this system that doesn't need to have that capacity improved and be sustained, because there's English learners across the entire system or prior English learners across the entire system, because it's 50% of the kids in our schools. So thank you so much to the instructional team, and we look forward to watching this work unfold on behalf of our kids. One last thing, you brought up the priorities, President Gonzalez Mares, and we reflected on that. Assistant Superintendent Pat Andrew Jennings and I talked about this, and I know she talked about it with her team of directors. And we don't have an intentional annual priority, but here we are sort of, launching this work. But, I do just want to, even though there isn't an intentional annual priority around English learners, when you talk about redesigning the middle schools where many of our LTELs, our long-term English learners, are sitting, English learners will be part of that conversation. When you talk about the gatekeeping that's happening because we don't have strong TK through 12th grade mathematics program alignment, guess who is, who are experiencing the barriers the most? The 44% of students in our system. And our other one around the interventions, right? Who probably need a lot of those academic interventions are those students who are currently classified and or reclassified English learners. So although there's not an intentional priority that states English learners, all three of those priorities focus on the English learner experience being improved in the school district.
Yeah, thank you for pointing those out. You did it much better than I did. As I was mentioning that it's embedded in there, of course. So I will now ask Mr. Bassinet, we have any public comment on this item?
We do have public comment from callers 624-5605.
Yep, can we have the speaker come to the and share their comment, please?
They're permitted to talk.
In my notes, I think that number is from a previous.
I believe it was Norma Ortiz.
Yes, you're right, Mr. Bassinet.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Ms. Ortiz, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Yes, well, there's a couple of things that I've heard Wested and the board talking about in terms of English language learners. But of course, as we all know, the ones that face the bigger challenge or the double challenge is those also classified as special education students. So it would be really, I would like to really see how that scaffolding and all those additional intensive supports are going to look like in terms of when our students come back, especially because there's a lot of documented regression. And also, I have, as being part of the DLAC committee, I have pointed out and requested that parents, because there's a lot of lack of of knowledge and understanding of, and I've seen it all across meetings from several parents, and I've had discussions with some of them too, where there's not enough understanding. So we need the adequate trainings, and I include myself. I have mentioned in previous meetings of this nature, DLAC, ELACs, and email back and forth with leadership, that we need to get the appropriate trainings. Last academic school year, 2020 and 2021, we just got one training, and I was pushing and pushing for that training. I did go to a 6-week training that I paid out of my cost, which I'm grateful I was able to. It was very affordable in terms of education topics involving English language learners, equity and inclusion, and also being a part of, as an employee of Napa Valley Unified School District. I would highly recommend that be also a mandatory training for especially top leadership. I would like to see that. And in terms of last year, 2020, 2021, at least it wasn't, and I went to all the meetings like I usually do, the DLAC meetings. We didn't have a discussion about parents getting together like we usually would do in the past with Dr. Sarah Williams, who was the previous director of English language learners. And we would do presentations to the board where we would suggest those our recommendations and our input involving these important topics to better support our the learning of our children. I didn't see that happening this past year. I hope that still continues, because that's part of engagement. And I do feel that portion that also falls into the master plan needs higher priority in terms of parents. We need to be better involved and really be in the business. Yes.
If you can just wrap up, please.
Sure. In true partners in the decision-making process with the district. And I'll continue more comments I have to say in next meeting. One more thing that WestEd, I had mentioned also and requested that if they could provide training.
Thank you, Ms. Ortiz. Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Mr. Bassinet, next speaker, please.
There's no further comment.
Okay. Thank you. Well, we've now concluded this presentation. We had discussion. Okay. All right. Okay, we are moving on to item J of our package, our action items. So J1A, request to hire educator less than fully credentialed.
So moved.
Second.
First by trustee Gracia, second by trustee Dooley. Do I have any public comment on this item?
There is no public comment for this item.
Thank you, Mr. Bassinet. Student board rep. We're voting on item J1A.
Aye.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody abstain or oppose? Thank you. All right, we're moving to J2A. This is the agreement between Lynn, Carlisle, and Napa Valley Unified School District.
So moved.
Second.
First by trustee Gracia, a second by trustee Dooley. Do I have any public comment?
There is no public comment for this item.
Thank you. Student board rep.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose or abstain? Thank you. J2B, agreement between Marie Butler and Napa Valley Unified School District.
So moved.
Second.
First by trustee Water, second by trustee Gracia. Do I have any public comment?
There is no public comment for this item.
Thank you. Student board rep.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody oppose or abstain? Thank you. Item J2C, memorandum of understanding between Sonoma State University and Napa Valley Unified School District.
So moved.
Second.
First by trustee Gracia, second by trustee Dooley. Public comment on this item, Mr. Bassinet?
There is no public comment for this item.
Thank you. Student board rep.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose or abstain? Thank you. Item J2D, agreement between Billy Donegan and Napa Valley Unified School District.
Could we talk about this for a sec?
Certainly, trustee Water, go ahead.
Okay, one of the things that appealed to me about the presentation we heard tonight from Wested was that people are being trained. You know, the goal is to train our teachers who are pretty smart so that they can be the experts. And Billy Donegan is a well-known consultant, and she has worked for us for 12 years. And I attended some of the workshops, and I'm just, you know, do we have, how long does this go on? And what are the results? And I guess I'd like to know the deliverables at the end of the year. Because the idea of training up our people to teach our people is extremely appealing to me.
Ms. Andrew Jennings, would you like to address trustee Waters' concern?
Yes, I'm gonna toss to, I think this, is it Monica or Matt, Director Manning is gonna address sort of the work that Billy Donegan has done and sort of the support she provides to our administrators. That's specific to implementation of initiatives. So Director Manning or Director Reddy, if you want to weigh in on here.
Sure, I can go ahead and start and then pass to Director Reddy. So Billy Donegan will be working this year specifically through the Cal Grant with McPherson Elementary School and Silverado Middle School. She'll be working with the principals of those two schools and with the leadership teams of those schools to do exactly what you're describing, trustee Water, which is to build the capacity of the principals and the leadership teams to deliver on the promises that we're making around supporting for our English learners and improving the instructional practices that are happening in the classroom. So this really is about capacity building for both of those schools, and the outcomes that we would expect at the end of the year are improved results for students and the sense of leadership that's being built amongst the leadership team at both of those school sites.
Thank you very much. Okay. Excuse me. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And Director Reddy, do you want to add to that?
As a follow-up, following the EL presentation, I think it's important to note that part of the focus of these is really to support specifically at the sites with our teachers too, around results for our English learners, which we know will improve all language and academics for all students. And so I think that's just in addition to building capacity, the focus is really aligned to the work that's happening with our board priorities, as well as the presentation you just heard from Wested.
Okay, great. That's good.
Move to approve.
First by trustee Gracia, second by trustee Water. Do I have public comment on this item?
There is no public comment for this item.
Thank you, Mr. Bassinet. Student Board Rep,
Aye.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose or abstain? Great, thank you. Great question, trustee Water, in correlation to what we were just talking about. J2E, agreement between Design for Emergence and Napa Valley Unified School District.
So moved.
Second.
First by trustee Gracia, second by trustee Dooley. Do I have public comment on this item?
There's no public comment for this item.
I just will say that I'm pretty excited about this item. It's got lots of language in there that I just really dives into designing and getting focus groups and users and all of that. So just want that in the record. All right, we had a first and a second and no public comment. Student Board Rep,
Aye.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstain? Excellent, thank you. Item J2F, adoption of updated board policy 6158 and AR 6158, independent study.
So moved.
Second.
First by trustee Gracia, second by trustee Dooley. Do I have public comment on this item?
There is no public comment for this item.
Great. Student Board Rep,
Aye.
all in favor?
Aye.
You oppose or abstain? Great, thank you. Item J3A, SPC number 71-21, request to surplus 2 relocatable classrooms at the old Napa Junction Elementary School site.
So moved.
I'll second.
First by trustee Gracia, second by trustee Chu. Do I have public comment?
There's no public comment for this item.
Thank you, Mr. Bassinet. Student board rep,
Aye.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody oppose or abstain? Great, thank you. We're now going into informational items. So this is item K1A, taxpayer savings due to general obligation bond refinancing.
Just want to say that it's really good anytime we can save our taxpayers some money that we proceed to do that. And this was a well-executed plan to do so. Good job.
Ditto.
Yep, ditto. Great, thank you. Then item K1B, NVUSD credit rating improved largely due to strong governance.
Yep, I would say well done to the board and to our executive team on getting this increased rating because it took a lot of hard work to get there.
Another round of dittos.
Makes it worth it. The late nights and everything, and the early mornings, conversations, and thank you staff and board for the leadership. Okay, so now we're on to item K2A. This is Stonebridge Charter Council minutes, the February 2021 through June 2021.
Much better minutes, much better minutes. So good job to Stonebridge.
All right. And now additional suggestions and comments from board members and superintendent.
Well, I guess my suggestion is something that could actually go to M, but I'll bring it up now. We have on our board now a leader in a student leader on the issue of climate change. And I was wondering if I would like Emily and her group to do a presentation before the board because we did pass the resolution a couple of years ago. And, you know, you all have been hard at work since then. Do we have room to do it on the 19th? She could do it for her, member presentation. You know, when we asked you what you've been up to.
The youth group?
Right.
Or did you want our board student rep, Emily, to share that during her student board presentation?
Well, you could do that too. Which would you prefer?
Either works for me. I guess in the interest of time, I could do it during my share out.
Okay. And if you have slides or anything that you want to bring, just provide them to us in advance, Emily. And we can have them ready for view during the meeting.
And if you need more time, that's okay. Also let us know because we know school's about to start.
They've been very active.
Okay, and
I just have just the English learner topic. So it's an area of passion of mine. It's why I became an educator, and it's I wrote a dissertation about English learners, and so just this is bringing up a lot of stuff for me. Good stuff. But one last thing I just want us to close with, as we dedicated a significant proportion of tonight's board meeting to the needs of our English learners, is that I just really want to caution us as a superintendent to not view the fact that our students have to learn English in school as a deficit, and that we need to remember that the English acquisition process in the K-12 experience actually, our students are coming with an asset, and it's the asset of another language. And they have the gift and the opportunity to learn English in school and then potentially leave our school system, assuming they still have their other language at home or whatnot. They have the opportunity to actually become bilingual and biliterate. And our students that are in our immersion programs have laser-like focus on that in their experience. But still, our students that, like me, I went to school only in English, but I had Spanish at home, and I have the gift of being bilingual and biliterate. And so I want to remind, we talk so much about the improvements and the needs and the challenges, but that this is not a deficit and it's actually a potential asset, and our mindset around that is really critical. So I just want to close with that thought and make sure that we do not take on the mindset of deficit thinking when it comes to meeting the needs of our English learners. That's really important to me.
I appreciate that very much, Dr. Massetti. I think we can get so focused on these assessments and the test and so on, and then they're designed for who and for what student and for, and so that kind of, that lens is really important. So I did want to respond to that, and I really appreciate that comment. Because when you're looking at it the other way, it just sort of, the approach is going to be very, very different. So, well, that's why you're here. Okay, any additional comments from the student or anybody? All right, so now, yeah, thank you, Trustee Water, agreed. Future agenda items? Okay, all right.
Move to
Next
adjourn.
item. Thank you. First by Trustee Gracia.
Second.
Second by Trustee Water. Student Board Rep. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.